because we also know that there are different and varying accommodation sectors in Barbados. And whilst the hotels might say that they're not seeing the pickup that they expect, the other reality is that you have the villa market that is showing remarkable resilience and that they're trending very well. And that's not to take away, because we have to look at the whole. I also made the point that we do not market to a wall. And therefore, what is incumbent, and this is what I've asked the BTMI, the BHTA to do, is to supply the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. with the occupancy statistics. We don't want their revenue. We can calculate it. If I want it, I can do it. But we don't want the revenue. What we want is for them to tell us where you are today versus where you are at the same time last year, is what we define as pacing. So if we understand how they are pacing, then, and the markets that they believe that they are down, and we could then take the proactive and aggressive marketing responses that are required to fill the destination. So that's what we're doing. It's a matter of airlift. I can also tell you that the Canadian and UK and US markets are actively in discussions with the airlines, their partners, to see how best we can come up with additional strategies. That's a work in progress. I'm not at liberty to disclose it. Maybe the CEO of BTMI can add some more, but I can't go too far because it's at a delicate stage in terms of discussion and some of the programs that they have put in the summer. Now, we've also, in my opening remarks, I set out to tell you exactly what we're doing for the summer. Not only crop over, not only Love Island that will bring us tremendous benefits, not only the Sol Rally, not only the CHTA that will be here in Barbados, not only FinTech that will come again. So I listed all of those to say these are but some of the activities that they have the BTMI have initiated in the market to drive additional summer business. And we're going to continue to work with all partners in all sectors. The BHTA also sits on the board of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Marketing Inc. And they also have a greater insight, perhaps even at me as minister, because they're in the action. But I said all of that to say it is not where it ought to be. We're going to have to push, and we're going to push hard, because we understand the value of tourism to Barbados and to the economy and to all the workers involved in tourism. In respect of the British pound, when I was in the UK for World Travel Market last November, that was a major concern to us, because we wanted to see how the economics would play out. Thankfully, and touch wood, we are not seeing any decline. In fact, when I made my opening remarks, you will see that of all the major source markets, the United Kingdom is back on track, and we are now realizing growth compared to pre-pandemic levels. So that market, we believe, even though there's some concerns. The other thing that when we were at WTM, that the wholesalers and the operators told us that Barbados is still their favorite destination. And the fact that we came out, we reopened late, they understood, but that Barbados will get back there. So we will monitor the situation. We will necessarily implement whatever tactics are required, whether it's you're purchasing US dollars, the vacation, or you're purchasing British pounds or euros, whatever. We will analyze the situation and give you that assurance, and obviously take the appropriate corrective measures required to adjust so we can protect Barbados as a destination. Thank you. I'm not sure if the Mr. Jens Strenhard would wish to add anything to my comments.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you for the question, Honorable Member. I actually love this question, because I think the biggest opportunity that Barbados has is the summer. I mentioned earlier that, by repositioning the island from beach only to more than beaches, I think we open ourselves up to really differentiate Barbados from other Caribbean and even global beach destinations, almost like as the place to be. And why the place to be is because this is where we have the festivals, the events, sporting, but also food and beverage. So all of that together, that existing infrastructure, and then adding other partnerships to it, make us and position us in a way that I think it's very hard to match for other destinations. I think one point that's important to point out is that, in order to develop airlift, we need to always look at sustainable airlift, because we don't want to just add airlift and look at minimum revenue guarantees, because as we have seen, a flight can go away in a matter of days. So I think sustainable airlift is important, and we can do that by marketing. We're doing that already very actively in the US and other markets, to go behind the gateway, to make sure that we have a big foundation of demand that can protect our existing airlift and grow new airlift. When you talk about resilience, I mentioned before in my intervention that I believe resilience is created via inclusivity, really making sure that we can stretch the tourism dollar and that everyone can be part of the tourism ecosystem. In fact, I wrote my doctorate thesis on this, and I think through research we're able actually to prove validity to that statement. The last thing I want to mention is public-private partnerships. And actually, we have Mr. Harris here in the room, and we've created a public-private partnership, which I think is unique and innovative globally with Book Barbados, to make sure that we can facilitate the demand of travelers that we are able to inspire to actually then book as well. And why is Book Barbados so unique versus other online travel agencies? Because they actually can go into the communities and have local product that it's very hard for other online travel agencies, Expedia, Booking, Agoda, and they're all great companies to really bring to the forefront. With that, I want to thank our market directors, because I think one reason for our success is that what our market teams do in the market, in our key source markets, is to really build these relationships day on, day out. They're with the airlines, with the tour operators, and that is something that sometimes is forgotten, but is very important, because not every destination has that luxury to do that. And I also want to thank our product team for going out there and working with our operators, even with the small businesses, to make sure that we create experiences that are creative, but also on the same account build capacity to make sure that these businesses and experiences are market ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister and CEO. I fully buy into what you're saying, Minister, that the pent-up demand for tourism globally will drive our summer market, but specifically as it pertains to community tourism. Ironically, I believe that the fact that, specifically when you talk about the UK tourists, they want to come to Barbados. Yes, their spending power is reduced, but they will find ways to come and enjoy our product. I see it via the Airbnbs and the tourists that are staying in guest houses, the tourists that are going out to Popular to shop, they're catching ZRs. Sometimes they look like they're hiking along the highway. So they love Barbados and they want to experience Barbados like a Bajan. And I'm aware that the global trend for tourism is tourists want to experience culture and they want to feel as though they're part of the community. So maybe it's happening somewhat organically that we should be all right during the summer months. But this leads me to my second question. Since we're seeing a lot more tourists living like Bajans, going to Popular, sometimes I see them walking through Batsers Road 9, 10 o'clock at night. How are we measuring the experiences that these tourists are having in these non-traditional ways that we may not have mechanisms in place to be able to gauge experiences? And also, because tourists are living more like Bajans, they're obviously going to interact with our infrastructure like we do. So they may have complaints, they may air their issues on TripAdvisor. What strategies and mechanisms do we have in place to be able to get this feedback?
Thank you very much. I'll ask as well the Ms. Lana Harewood, who has done extensive work in this area, as well as if the CEO wants to chip in again. But what I can tell you regarding the feedback is that there is a apparatus within the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. that gets a lot of the complaints and or compliments from tourists on the island. They have a filtering system. It informs us how, in the ministry, how best we can help strengthen the product, and areas that we need to initiate included what we would have discussed earlier, the whole issue of assessment and audits to help build out our facilities. That is going well, and I will ask Ms. Harewood to address that specific point. In respect of community tourism, there's no better, I think the word that is being used now, and the CEO can confirm this, is the whole issue of sustainability. Travel trends now indicate that people want to come to a destination and they want to do so based on sustainability. So there's a huge opportunity for us to take tourism into the community. We have aspects of it already, and we have to build out, similar to what the Honourable Member Sir Thomas would have spoken to the Hillaby experience, but we have to build it out. But we have to do the build out in such a way that we can convert that into a wonderful experience and a brilliant attraction. Oistins has earned its name over time because of sustainability, the fact that tourists want to go, interact, they want to support the fishermen, they want to support the vendors, they want to support the caterers, they want to support the bars, because they understand that. And that is a trend that has developed. I think it's relatively new, where people are trending based on all the market research that we're seeing. People want to travel for sustainability reasons. There's also a segment in the environment as well. And therefore, we are pushing on with what we have to do in respect of opening up additional attractions within communities. If we can open up attractions in communities, it not only provides an attraction, but it also provides an opportunity for employment in the area, small business persons to sell their craft, to have traditional Barbadian dish or food and beverage, and set it up in such a way that reflects Barbados, and to offer what tourists like to come here for, in addition to other factors, the warmth of our people. So we are going to be working on that in respect of sustainability. We are also, in terms of the earlier point, and I want to go back to your previous questions just briefly, the issue with summer bookings as well has to do with the booking window. And people and all persons involved in the business would tell you that the booking window has changed. It has become shorter. And as a result of that, you have to put the required tactics in place to address that as well. So the booking window is shorter, so you might have a hotel or an establishment that have 50% occupancy on the books today, but then within another 2 or 3 months leading to summer, they may have moved by maybe 10, 12 percentage points because of the booking window. And that's why I made the point earlier that we have to look at this whole issue of pacing. The other issue as well is our segue into the Gulf states. You know that summer in those areas is a really, really hot summer. And that presents an opportunity for them. They go to the UK, they go to Paris, they go to the United States. And what we have been, based on our preliminary information, what we are seeking to do is to try to to get some of those travelers from the Gulf states who go into those jurisdictions to come to Barbados, particularly the younger ones. And as you would well appreciate, when those persons in the Gulf, when they travel with an entourage. And we are making, I think, reasonable progress on the ground. That's why I made the point in my opening remarks that we need to get into some of these new and emerging markets. It's not going to happen overnight, not by any stretch of the imagination. It will take some time to build. But once we get in there and build the market, get the Barbados brand out there, we believe that we can start to see some results, gradual results, which would then help us to accomplish the overall objective. I'll defer now to Ms. Lana Harewood, and if the CEO, Ms. Ian Strayhart, wants to comment. Ms. Harewood?
Thank you, Minister. I would have mentioned before that under the product quality unit, there is a committee, the Tourism Improvement Coalition, and complaints that come into our department. As I stated, there are various regulatory stakeholders that sit on that coalition. I mentioned the Ministry of Health and Wellness. We also have the SSA, Barbados Police Service is another stakeholder. So depending on the nature of the actual complaint as it comes in, it's recorded within the product quality unit, but it's also forwarded on to the necessary entity for assistance to have corrective action as well. So that's how we handle those situations. But complaints are also, I should also add that complaints are also received by the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. as well. So depending on the nature of it, is either handled by us or the BTMI. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable member, I thank you very much for this great question. I believe really as you talked about creating Bajan experiences and have visitors feel like a Bajan, it's almost like you create a sense of belonging. You can either be Bajan by birth or Bajan by choice. And if you're Bajan by choice, you enter this community as you not just be a tourist and a visitor, but you actually, it's bigger than that. And I guess in the end, tourism starts at home. So I think when local people, real Bajans, are enjoying the destination, then visitors want to partake. And so I think there is a huge opportunity for us to create something bigger than just bringing tourists to the island. You talked about the issue of measuring these activities. How can we measure when people frequent these local experiences? So this is where we would move into digital transformation, and where we're, through the IDB and the project execution unit at the ministry, looking to build an innovative mobile application which allows a visitor and residents alike to connect with local businesses. So in one hand, it almost becomes a marketplace, and we become a connector between these businesses or I would call them experience providers and consumers, visitors and residents. And businesses can then kind of provide offers and deals, and consumers can get access to these benefits. And with that then, when people valid or take advantage of these deals and offers, through then scanning QR codes, we get then information and data that allows us not only to see what the local and the economic impact is, but also what the visitor flow is, because that's another issue where we can then actually manage the destination better and see, where are maybe some overcrowding that might degrade the experience of a visitor at a certain attraction or so on. Right? So it's a bigger topic, but I just wanted to raise that. I think I thank your question, and I think there's a huge opportunity for us. When it comes to customer service and payment issues, there's obviously some issues, especially with small businesses. On the payment side, as I mentioned before, we're partnering with Book Barbados to enable payment to these small businesses. On the customer service side, however, now through the advent of artificial intelligence and ChatGPT is in everyone's mouth now, there's also an opportunity to now position the destination through technology, through artificial intelligence, as a customer-centric, service-oriented destination. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. We are honorable members for St. Michael West. We are aware you have one more question. We're asking you to hold, as all others who have indicated they wish to speak, as we're going to break now, and we will start back in the same order which we have here indicated.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report progress to His Honor the Speaker and beg leave to sit again.
Beg second.
The question is that I now report progress to His Honor the Speaker and ask for leave to sit again. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported progress and asked for leave to sit again. Honorable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 2:20 p.m.
Beg to second that.
The question is that this honorable chamber be suspended until 2:20 p.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting, the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands suspended until 2:20 p.m.
this House is now in Standing Finance Committee. When we took the break, the Honorable Member for St. Michael West had the floor. He has one further question, and Honorable Member for St. Michael West.
Thank you, Chair. This is actually a follow-on from my second question, which was focused on community-based tourism. It would be remiss of me if I did not mention that the constituency that I serve, St. Michael West, in that constituency, there is a very famous road, which was actually made more famous when we would have all seen the video that was released by Apple Music promoting the most honorable Robin Rihanna Fenty. And that road is Rihanna Drive, formerly known as Westbury Road. I'm very grateful that that road was just recently paved. The residents there are extremely happy. But whenever I'm there, they always remind me of the sheer volume of tourists that visit that area. And when I spend my time by one of the two shops at the top, and I just sit there and I watch the volume of tourists, they're exactly right. I swear it's about one a minute, at least one vehicle a minute that passes both at the top where there's the signage and by her childhood home. So as such, I am in the belief that this has to be one of the most popular tourist attractions in Barbados, from what I'm seeing. And as such, as the discussion, which was first introduced by my colleague to the left, the Honorable Member for St. Thomas, in her mission to open up the opportunities for community tourism in that constituency, I myself believe that Rihanna Drive is a gold mine for tourism in this country. And as we seek to, as the Honorable Member from St. Michael South said, what is our strategy to diversify our offerings away from sun, sea, and sand? And I believe that Rihanna Drive is one of many opportunities that we have just sitting there that is already utilized. So my question is, has the ministry examined this phenomena, and what opportunities for investment do you see in this area? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. You're correct. Rihanna Drive is one of the community initiatives, often labeled as community tourism. And I'm with you because, as I indicated earlier, taxi operators do us justice by ensuring that the Rihanna Drive became a very popular stop for tourists on the island, not only cruise passengers, but other visitors to Barbados. What I can tell you is that this is also top of the agenda for the product quality team. Assessments are being done in that general area. We have to start looking and see how best we can scope it and scope it out to meet the requirements of the community. We don't want to lose that community touch, but we have to scope it in such a way that we have that community feel about it. It is one of the most popular stops on island tours. It is an opportunity, as you know, for food and beverage and other products that are sold in that general area. And we intend to build out, but keeping that community-based community spirit, recognizing that the Rihanna brand itself complements the Barbados brand and helps us to get our name out there. I went on record when Rihanna performed halftime at the Super Bowl, and I indicated that there's no medium that and no quantum of money that we could have paid for the benefit of Rihanna flying that Barbados flag. We continue to be grateful to her for all that she continues to do by carrying that Barbados flag wherever she goes. And that has also helped us to bring greater, or that has helped to bring greater brand recognition, not only to Rihanna, but also to Barbados, because she's always putting Barbados first. So we are, to answer your question, focused on an assessment there, but seeing how best we can build out that facility, but keeping that community tourism drive going. So I thank you for the question. I'm not sure, sorry. The Chief Executive Officer of the BTM would also like to add a comment. I'm not sure if Ms. Lana here would also wish to add to it, and if as well Nicole, IDB project, National Tourism, the National Tourism Program would wish to speak to it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. To this point, actually, what we have done, and I just received it this morning in my inbox, that we are now incorporating Rihanna Drive into our trade show booth designs. We're actually taking Rihanna Drive and bringing it to the world, and we're designing it according to our brand standards. And so again, while other destinations have or claim to have great beaches, I think no one can claim to be the birthplace of Rihanna. So for us, obviously, it's a great opportunity, and it's scalable and flexible. And I think this is something that, again, differentiates Barbados, puts us into a different place. And right now, obviously, tagging on to the Super Bowl, the halftime show, I think this is something that we capitalize right away, and we're looking to have that at trade shows that are coming up in 2023. Thank you.
Ms. Hayward, would you wish to add any comments?
Thanks, Minister. I do agree that it can be explored in terms of another product assessment audit being conducted in the area to see how we can possibly enhance the area to improve the guest experiences there. So I do agree that another audit can be done of the area. Thank you.
Nicole Aline.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicole Aline, and I'm the project coordinator for the National Tourism Program. To your question, Honorable Member of Parliament, yes, the Rihanna Drive is an important visitor attraction for Barbados. And while it currently does not sit within the National Tourism Program, it certainly aligns with the ethos and the principles of that program, particularly in relation to one of the components under that program, Component 1, which speaks to the development of new tourism products. And in developing those products, the emphasis is on cultural heritage tourism. And Rihanna Drive represents that aspect of our cultural heritage in terms of showing where she has come from as a Barbadian and her contribution, not just nationally, but internationally as a musical icon who consistently represents Barbados in all of her performances and so forth. So it's certainly, yes, is a untapped potential, with potential for development, and possibly maybe in another phase under the National Tourism Program, it could be considered for inclusion under the auspices of that. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, just to add, I think one of the obstacles that we have to overcome is how do we measure the impact of community tourism in communities. And that is something that we have to undertake as a separate project. Because I believe if it were known that community tourism, we have multiple examples of those across Barbados, how they impact communities, and then how best we can then encourage them to go to the next level to further build out capacity with opportunities for increased business activities and sales. And that is something that we also have to focus on. And all these new attractions, as I indicated when I came to office, the first thing I asked for is for an assessment, a competitive review. Because the destination that continues to add attractions is a destination that will continue to gain great traction. And I just wanted to add those few remarks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thank you, Honorable Member for St. Michael West. Honorable Member for St. James South.
Thank you very much, sir. And let me express congratulations to the team. I was very relieved to hear the wonderful numbers coming in at 90%, 95%, etc., of where we were in 2019. I know it would have been a hard pull for us to be able to do it, but Barbados really depended on you to do that, and I really want to congratulate everybody on it. One of my questions would have been touched on by some of the other members earlier. That was the issue of the community tourism, because I believe that there has to be a greater participation by the ordinary Barbadian in the tourism experience, in the delivery, to see its importance. I truly believe that the COVID, I think for those who were not aware before, for the first time became aware how much tourism supports their livelihood, even if they don't work directly in the industry. And I noted with great anticipation the number of air services agreements that you've signed with various countries from places that we're not familiar with, the non-traditional partners. So my view is that we need to prepare the population to be able to engage those new cultures so that they understand that tourism is really our business. So I wanted to know if there were plans or in relation to how are we going to prepare Barbadians to be receptive, especially if you have community tourism and people are going into the non-traditional spots and places, to ensure that there is a welcoming and receptive spirit among Barbadians as we do this, because unless that happens, it will negate all the wonderful work that you do in doing the air services agreement, marketing in the destination, bringing the people here. What are the plans for preparing the average Barbadian to better understand their role and how they can play it so that they can be wonderful partners with you in this work of saving and creating prosperity for Barbados?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member, for your statement and question. In respect, let me take it in order. In respect of cricket, I would like to let you know, since you represent the constituency of St. James South, yes, and there are a number of very distinguished West Indian and Barbadian cricketers who originate from that area, that we are also going to have a renewed focus on cricket as part of the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc.'s mandate. There is a vacancy for sports tourism manager. I am aware that they're actively doing the interviews to conclude that. Once that is done, we will see a number of new and exciting initiatives, because part of the community tourism concept revolves around, and there's nothing new, long before my time, the fact that you can have distinguished Barbadian and West Indian cricketers hosting tournaments on island and hosting those tournaments within communities. What that does for Barbados as a destination, it allows, for example, the young, and the not so young to come to Barbados with their families to see their children and or their parents or grandparents play cricket here in Barbados. And that is renewed, like I said, a renewed emphasis is being played on the whole concept of sports tourism. I just illustrated that one because you're from the St. James South constituency, so that will be also top of mind for you as we go into the communities. And I'm sure that perhaps the BTM will wish to expand on that. The other issue regarding the air services agreement, you're correct. We are updating. There are a number of air services agreement that the government over time would have signed. We are upgrading those air services agreement to bring them into the modern era. And that is also necessary for us to also build out our aviation sector. But to prepare for, because as we pursue the revised air services strategy, we wish to bring people from different destinations with perhaps language, what we may consider language barriers. We have put a number of initiatives in place. For example, I believe it was last month, I met with the head of mission for the Institute for Venezuela, and they have offered us a number of language, Spanish classes in this case, training for Barbadians and also within the ministry. So we are building that out. We are also utilizing an orientation platform to allow for adequate preparation of persons who will now be traveling from some of the jurisdictions that we want to pull or attract into Barbados, what I consider those from the new and emerging markets. If, for example, we want to attract more visitors from the Gulf, then there's certain cultural practices that we will have to reorient, and there's certain guides that we would have to ensure are in place as standards so that we don't lose those persons when they come to Barbados. And I only use those two examples, but you're correct in your assessment that we need to facilitate greater interaction. We need to get more of the tourists, but we also have to ensure that we orient them, or to use the new word, onboard them, to ensure that the markets that we go after will become a permanent fixture and not of a temporary nature. I'm not sure if the BTM will wish to add to those remarks. Jens, do you wish to add any comments?
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Minister, I think great and a very important question. I believe that in order for us to be successful in tourism, we need to be inclusive. But more than just being inclusive, we need to make sure that people can contribute in the tourism ecosystem. I mentioned this morning a few of our initiatives where we're looking to kind of create a collection of experiences by small businesses, but also by individuals. Our team is going out and have gone to each parish to have town halls and to talk about the activities that we're doing, and as such also engage the communities in coming up with activities that we can then promote via our platforms. But also in March now, we're starting to go out to the schools and educate the school children about the importance of tourism, especially here, and I think that's a critical part. And then in phase 2, later on in the year, we will also rolling this out to a wider public as well. So those are just a few points to add to the Minister's intervention. Thank you.
The PS will also like to add a few comments.
To add further to Minister and my colleague Jens, I would say that Barbados' model for tourism development has always one that included tourism, the communities. Barbadians, as far back as the days, even when the mighty Gabby penned his song, That Beach Is Mine, we've always guarded our beaches because there's a sense of ownership by Barbadians within the tourism sphere that this is part of ours. So the ministry basically then intends to continue to build on that and intends to also, as we build out new attractions, to ensure that those communities are not just simply bystanders within that atmosphere, but actually become a part of the fabric, be either small entrepreneurs in there or also be part of the attraction in terms of ownership. So the intention is to continue to build up that, to put incentive schemes in place that allow persons to move from one attraction to the next, so you have a feeder model. And these are some of the ideas that we have been engaging on in the ministry in order to push the community tourism aspect of it. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you so much. It is something that is very dear to my heart in relation to that level of engagement. The other program that I wanted to ask about was the Welcome Stamp. It is such a wonderful program, and I think it is brilliant in terms of getting us to have tourists for long periods and so on. So if you could share what have been some of the results, what have been some of the benefits to Barbados, and if there are any plans for how we can deepen and strengthen the Welcome Stamp as a part of our product mix.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. As I indicated during my presentation, we view the Welcome Stamp as an excellent addition to the attraction of Brand Barbados. We have a dedicated officer, as I indicated earlier, and that officer deals exclusively with the Welcome Stamp. We have included the marketing of the Welcome Stamp as part of the BTMI's remit, so that when we go to market, we speak proudly about the Welcome Stamp. We recognize that there are people who can work remotely. That is another opportunity for us in the accommodation sector, and it will spin off to obviously food and beverage and restaurants and bars and the like. There are opportunities abound there, and we recognize that and it was introduced during the COVID period, but even though it was introduced then, we are still realizing that there is significant interest in the Welcome Stamp. We intend to, as I said, bill it out as part of our marketing efforts when we're in market, and the officers in market are ensuring that this remains top of the mind for most of the persons who have a direct interest in working in Barbados. I don't have the latest statistics with me. I'm not sure if the BTM would have those, but what I can tell you is that it has been a remarkable program, and we will continue to focus on the Welcome Stamp as a branded initiative to help us build out our arrivals, because once you are here, the occasion will happen, there will be occasions where family members would want to come to Barbados, and there's nothing like waking up and you have brilliant sunshine, and you can look across the ocean and you can show your friends in their homeland, look, this is Barbados. So it's also helped us in a very indirect way to market Barbados as well. I'm not sure if the BTMI would wish to add any additional points to my statement.
Thank you, Minister. Yes, I agree that the Welcome Stamp program is not only a revenue earner to Barbados, but also is a great marketing tool. We're getting around over 70% of applicants are coming from the US, the UK, Nigeria, and Canada. Those are the bulk of the registrations or the applications that are coming in. Now, obviously, this sector of long stay or digital nomad programs is now very popular all over the world. So it's a very competitive sector, if you want to call it that. And we have actually counted over 50 programs that are active out there. Now, again, obviously, people applying for various programs, but so far in the existence of the program, we had 533 individual registration, 583 family registrations. They actually were accepted, and they also paid the application fee, and they are on island. So I mean, obviously there's always a downfall. People apply, some people are not accepted for whatever reason. But what's interesting, when we look at the statistics a little bit more, we actually see that a lot of the applications from the US come out of California. It's actually New York and California. So it's a great way for us also to expand our footprint when it comes to promoting Barbados. And it's, I forgot the number right now, but it's, I think, over 120 countries where we received at least one application from. So again, I think to your question as relates to the future of the program, we're looking to work more collaboratively with Invest Barbados and obviously with immigration, but Invest Barbados for the purpose of now moving people that have been on island into investing in the destination. So where BTMI is focused on promoting the program and helping people that are new to the island to get all the information and get set up, but then helping them through Invest Barbados to get the information how they can invest, maybe start a business, buy a house or condo, and so on. So I think the future of Barbados, for the Welcome STEM program in Barbados is strong. It's a very competitive sector, but I think due to the diversity of the experiences and the infrastructure Barbados has on island, it is quite competitive out there, other than maybe other destinations. Thank you.
Just a quick follow-on to that. Do we know why California finds Barbados attractive for Welcome STEM?
It's a very interesting question. I'm just
fascinating that we got people from there.
I'm just assuming that California obviously has a huge tech sector, and that a lot of the, I've met quite a few Welcome Stampers from California, and they all were from the tech sector, and so that they believe they can work remotely, because many of the tech companies, they are pro-remote working. So that's maybe why it was accepted with these kind of companies and organizations, and that they are more prone to look at these kind of programs.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to even more coming from out of the Welcome Stamp. Again, congratulations on executing it so well. Really pleased about that. The last thing I wanted to ask about was the work that you're doing in the various markets. I know that you have people positioned in different places. If you could sort of share that with us. And I was particularly interested in the diaspora. Is there any emphasis on them in terms of engaging them? I know when we were thinking of doing regathering, BTMI had started working with us on looking at a program with the diaspora. In Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, we want to put some emphasis on it in this year. And therefore, I wanted to get a sense of how BTMI uses their diffusion across the various markets, and if any of them are giving you any energy in terms of the diaspora.
Thank you, Minister. First, to answer the first part of your question, what we're trying to do in the market is really bring Barbados, out and use it almost as a distribution channel. So we're looking to focus on activations that are aligned to our activities on islands. For example, food and rum. So we're looking to almost like transport Barbados into the markets to make sure that people can experience a taste of Barbados in the UK, in the US, in Canada. And now we are also promoting crop over and food and rum in the Caribbean, and we are represented at all the various carnivals currently in Trinidad. So that's kind of like our recipe there, and then have that supported by our campaigns, through content and so on. As it relates to diaspora, I personally believe that there's huge potential in building a very solid diaspora program out there. Other destinations have, or countries have done it. If we look at Ghana or India, for example. So we're working on building concepts around that to see how we can incentivize diaspora to invite their friends in the various locations all over the world to come to Barbados and experience their homeland.
If I may, Chair, with your leave, if I may add, in terms of the diaspora, earlier this morning during my presentation, I made reference to the fact that we will have to open up new and emerging markets. And I did make specific reference to Latin America and our base in Panama. Now, as we know, there is a diaspora market there. I know oftentimes we concentrate on Canada, United States, and of course the United Kingdom. But within that market, there are a number of opportunities that we intend to tap into. And those opportunities will help us to build out. There will be some planned events the latter part of March into early April in that region when we are on the road. And we're doing so because not only for geographic reasons, because we have Copa Airlines flying out of there, but we also have a number of Barbadians and relatives of Barbadians and persons who would have their origins in Barbados based in Panama, and we want to tap into that market. It's a very lucrative market for us because Copa comes out of Panama and they're doing very well on their flights. And therefore, we believe that the strategy to move into the Latin American market, as we call it LANTAM, with full force with a full team, will help us not only to drive business for the diaspora and to involve them, but we are also going to create new business from that market. We will also be taking on the road with us in Panama one of our signature events, the Food and Rum Festival, to give persons a taste of that, because there are also other Panamanians who might have heard about Barbados and other Latin American persons who've heard about Barbados or who don't know about Barbados, to give them a taste of what a Barbados experience is like, including music and the like. So we are doing all these things to shore up and to help build out, because if we do a lot of the work that we're doing and that we propose to do behind the gateway, it would also give the airlines additional confidence to add additional aircraft to the route in order to help us generate increased arrivals into Barbados.
Let me just thank everyone very much, and I'm again very, very pleased with the excellent work.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thank you, Honorable Member for St. James South. Honorable Member for St. Michael North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wouldn't join other members and say finally. Thank you for acknowledging me, but thank you so much for acknowledging me in this discussion and presentation. And let me take this opportunity to applaud and congratulate the Honorable Minister and his team for the presentation thus far. And clearly, we can have a high degree of confidence in this team for taking our tourism product to the next level. Throughout the course of today's proceedings, several questions have been asked and answered. So I've had to revise them from time to time. And I want to touch a bit, firstly, on the community tourism question that has come up quite a bit. I would like to hear concrete action plans relative to how are we going to move our tourism product from what it is or what it has been over many decades to what we now realize is an essential transformation that has to take place, bringing it to that level where all of our key characteristics, features, attributes of what it is to be a Barbadian and Bajan are put on full display for our people. And I wanted to tie the question really to some of the other initiatives that would have been discussed in this hallowed chamber relative to things like the building blocks, for example, where we would have had a vision, I believe, as a government, where we would have community enterprises, where we would have entrepreneurs setting up in different parts of our constituencies as members of parliament, and also the vending zones that would have been talked about as well. How are we concretely putting plans in place to move tourists from our cruise terminals, from our airport, into the various communities, for example, in Eden Lodge, Grisettes, Cave Hill, where I have several budding entrepreneurs, people who are involved as a minister who has responsibility for industry, persons who are involved in various cottage industries, and persons who are out there plying their trade in very entrepreneurial endeavor and activities. We have persons who are making cosmetic products from natural resources. We have persons who are making food from all of the natural resources that we have at our disposal. And these are tremendously high quality products that are not only good for our local consumption, but they would actually serve a tremendous benefit to tourists who are visiting our shores as well. So the first question really is, how are we linking tourism to industry and bringing it to the grassroots level? How are we building upon programs like the building blocks and the vendor zones to ensure that we are giving our tourists the best possible experience of what Barbados has to offer? I don't know if, Mr. Chairman, you want me to answer all three since the time is limited. Should I just answer all three one time?
That is entirely
Let me answer all three.
your discretion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One at a time? Okay, I'll be guided by the minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Of course, morning to this afternoon, we would have recited a number of the community tourism ventures that are in place. What I'd like to suggest to honourable members is that whenever there is a potential for a community tourism program to be built out in your constituency, that you should refer those to the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. For their review. I think that's one concrete way of starting the process, because it's not often time that we will know every corner of Barbados and what is happening with every community event. The second thing is that what we would want to do is to ensure that every visitor to Barbados experience what I call Taste of the Barbados experience, be it culinary, be it just the experience in the community, be it purchasing locally made items. And I think that's a wonderful opportunity for us to pursue the issues, how do we get there? And oftentimes those in the community will have a nice community project, but oftentimes they also want some assistance in order to understand how they could best sustain the experience. For example, if in your constituency, Michael North, we wanted to have a come into St. Michael North and have lunch with a Barbadian family, or to have a local culinary experience, so they can enjoy pudding and sauce and flying fish and cuckoo, and what I would consider local dishes. That's an opportunity. If it's well planned, well marketed, could be factored in to our tourism plan. And the BTMI, I know they're at work. For example, on the east coast of Barbados, there are a series of events that we are planning. But just not to build an event, what we have to do is to ensure that when we put resources behind these projects, that they benefit the communities in a very sustainable way. For example, let's use the rum shop. Does the rum shop benefit? Does the food shop benefit? Does the local arts and craft people within the community? But what we have to do sometimes, because if you, for cruise ships, for example, when they're taking what we call onshore excursions, they have a time to get back to the boat. But if we can have in a central location, use St. Michael North, that could be another experience where we can, for example, sell to the visitor an experience to spend, a couple hours with a Barbadian family, understanding Barbadian products, food, and understand a little bit of the culture. That's an opportunity. So I do agree with you. We can concretize them, but I would also recommend that submissions be sent to the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. for active consideration, and we do a lot of that already. I'll ask the Chief Executive Officer of the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. if you would want to add to my comments. Mr. Jens Trenhart.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Minister, for your great question. You asked for action steps, so I think I mentioned the program that we're looking to embark on, which as a working title, the Bajan Experiences Collection, really looking to curate experience providers from small businesses to individuals into a collection to inspire people via storytelling. We already have developed the concept, and we already have started curating or build a list of potential businesses that are market ready via our product development team. So from an action step standpoint, the next step would be to start with stakeholder workshops, because we believe that the stakeholders need to be engaged from the ground up. They need to own this. We're just really the facilitators of the program. And we're not just looking at accommodation or at restaurants and so on, but we're looking in 5 categories: taste, stay, shop, do, and tour. And so that kind of creates a whole experience ecosystem for guests and residents to experience. Then we're looking to create content, and that content needs to be inspiring and really tell the story of these businesses, and as you said, of these entrepreneurs. Why did they start this business? And that's what people want today. They want to connect to the story and to the people behind the business instead of just going there as a guest. The next piece would be really capacity building, and capacity building has various pieces on it. One, obviously, is to make sure that these businesses are market ready, that they can present themselves in the right way, that they can market on social media, but also that their experience in itself is at a certain standard, when it comes to hygiene or just the experience itself, but also sustainability, because it gives us an opportunity now to put certain requirements in place for these experiences or businesses to be part of the collection, which is then a way for us to promote them via our BTMI platform. So I could say, for example, in order for you to be part of the collection, you need to be not be using single-use plastic, for example. And so we can always raise the bar and making the destination more sustainable overall, really from the ground up. The next part would be really to build a B2B website for these businesses, obviously, to learn, to engage, and get all the information they need. And then next step would be a consumer website where we then all have the content housed, and these stories, really inspiring the consumer. From a facilitation standpoint, I would imagine that we would look to partner again with Book Barbados to facilitate the booking mechanism around that. So that's kind of like just to give you a few concrete action steps, how we're envisioning rolling out this program this year. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Minister and CEO, for providing additional context for me. When I heard of the Connect, I thought that it was larger experiences, but I'm glad to hear you say that you're bringing it really down to the grassroots level of entrepreneurs. It reminds me, and I was going to make this suggestion when you talked to me, until you talked about the B2B and the B2B platform. I was going to make the recommendation, a suggestion that, much like I did in St. Michael North with a St. Michael North Community Business Register, where we just basically created a portal where all of the businesses within the constituency could be registered. I could therefore know who is operating and what the nature of the business is, and I could connect them to each other, and then when I'm having activities, pool them into one place. I was going to make that suggestion, so I'm very glad to hear that you're doing something very similar at a macro level. It brings me to the next question, still in the area of industry, and Pelican Village. Pelican Village has been, I would say, one of our untapped and underutilized tourism products, components, cogs. I think that unfortunately, because of how it is currently oriented, that we don't get the kind of throughput that we would want to see from that location. It sits right next to our port, our cruise terminal, but unfortunately, a lot of the traffic walks along Travers Way, does not come into the craft center, and many of the businesses there unfortunately have reported to me for quite some time that they have not seen the kind of visitation by our tourists that they would like to see, the amount of footfall that they would like to see. So my question to you and team, Minister, would be, what are the plans right now or any type of projections relative to how do we better utilize the Pelican Village location? How do we drive traffic from the cruise terminal? How do we drive that foot traffic through that specific location so that we can actually see the vendors and the various residents who are in that location, the various participants in that location, that they can actually see some value for being so closely connected to and situated to the Bridgetown Cruise Terminal?
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. As you were asking the question, I was going to seek leave of the chair to ask you a question, but I can't do that. And to say to you that I believe it's vested within your ministry, but if you prefer to vest the Pelican Village in the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport, then I'll be very happy to do so, but I can't answer the question because I'm here to answer your question. So, having said, put that banter aside, Pelican Village, I think personally, and it's not a criticism of any government, I believe the design is not fit for purpose. The reality is that it should be like a U, where you allow the visitors to the island to actually see what goes on there. What we have is a collection of shops at the front, but then there are other shops at the rear of the street-facing building. And what that does oftentimes is that people will bypass. But I believe it's a wonderful opportunity for us to build it out. It doesn't sit within my purview as minister, and I don't cross ministerial lines. I believe it sits with your ministry. But I believe if MOU or some other arrangement could be put in place, we'll be happy to partner with you in the interim to build out a better experience there. I firmly believe it's prime real estate. And when you walk from Princess Alice Highway heading to Bridgetown, indeed that entire stretch left and right is prime real estate. Is how we are able to maximize the economic value of the lands on both sides of the road. And I think it could be an excellent starting point if we were to repurpose and refit the Pelican area. But I can't go into that into too detail because that is within your ministry. But if you wish to engage us in a discussion, I'll be happy to have the board of the BTMI and the officers have an early meeting with your team to understand how best we could build. I believe what you're looking for is some synergies there, but more importantly, how the owners and operators at Pelican can benefit from increased economic activity, money really, revenue from that site. But it is something that if you are up to it, we could potentially revisit, have a conversation, have dialogue to see how best we could work together. Thank you.
Absolutely, and that is the way I laid it on the table today. I think it is going to be useful for us going forward to ensure that we are, as we have sought to do over the last few weeks, discuss the mission economy and how do we then bring a singular focus to the things that we're seeking to do and achieve. And it brings me right back to the collaboration that was very strong with the Ministry of Tourism, the Ministry of Business, I believe it was at the time. I can't remember what it was called, under Senior Minister, the Honorable Member for St. James Central, but the Festive Fridays. And that was a tremendously successful collaboration between multiple ministries at the time. And it is something that we need to be able to revitalize and move forward, even as we discuss. And even within the ministry, we have plans relative to how do we redesign Pelican, but we would definitely need to have a dialogue with the Ministry of Tourism to see how we can ensure that what we redesign and what you propose, when it works together, is a happy marriage that brings the footfall that we desire for our people who are there resident. And the last question relates to technology. And how are we seeking as the Ministry of Tourism to better incorporate technology, science, innovation to once again enhance our tourism product? And I heard mention of an app, a mobile app. I think it was the CEO of BTMI that mentioned a mobile app. But I wanted to hear a little bit more relative to virtual reality, artificial intelligence. What is the plan for the ministry relative to these things? I can mention right off the bat that the ministry that I have the honor to lead would have created a tremendous platform in Bridgetown as a smart town, a smart city, where we would have created and installed over 85 internet access points, therefore creating free Wi-Fi all across the length and breadth of Bridgetown. So persons commuting from any of the transport board locations, the terminals throughout Swan Street, throughout Broad Street, can actually log on to the free Wi-Fi that is now available to them. This is available not only to our local citizens, but is also available to our tourists. And I think the plan was to have, or the vision is to have virtual tourism, where we can have tours being done via that same internet platform that has been created, where persons can go to various sites and scan a QR code and be able to get additional information about that location, etc. So I give it over to you, Minister, to speak a little bit more about the use of technology and science and innovation relative to building out and enhancing our tourism product. And with that, that would be my final question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, Honorable Member. Yes, we have started that process. We have some QR codes already available, because one of the trends we recognize is that travelers using their mobile devices don't really want to travel with a lot of hard copy stuff. They prefer to have what we refer to as soft copy using the phone. We are also in the process of ensuring that all the vendors on the beach, that we create an opportunity for them through similar technologies. Whereas you can, when you arrive at the Grantley Adams International Airport or at strategic locations in the hotel room, we could allow you to use a QR code to download information. As you do now when you go in a restaurant, you scan the menu from a QR code. In respect of the Ministry of Tourism, we are getting ready to appoint, well, we have to advertise and then we're going to appoint someone to deal with data analytics. It is an area that I recognize is of weakness, and therefore we have to strengthen it. And data analytics can go into a range of information hitherto unknown, and therefore we are going to be activating that process. The hotel sector, along with other sectors of accommodation, they're also building out a lot and utilizing a lot of technology. When I talk, for example, about pacing and how hotels are doing, or the accommodation sector is doing, a lot of that has been refined and has been perfected by persons in hotels outside of Barbados, as well as the aviation industry in terms of revenue management. And revenue management is one of those areas where I think we need to have greater success. And with new technologies, we can also bring that to bear to help us. In addition, that information will also be very timely. For example, in your side of the business, in terms of industry, we can also use it, for example, to feed information into the Ministry of Finance, Economic Affairs and Investments. So there is a number of initiatives planned, but I will also recognize that there are a lot of persons involved in the accommodation sector in restaurants and bars that have already commenced using QR codes for menu displays and ordering and the like. So we will continue to build out on that platform. In respect of virtual tourism, we have to be a little careful because we still want people to come to Barbados and to visit Barbados. It is okay to have a virtual air traffic control tower because once you have the equipment, you can do that. But with virtual tourism, we have to be a little careful because I won't want to see the numbers decreasing into arrivals in the Barbados because somebody can sit home and enjoy it. Now, what I would like to do in terms of utilizing technology is to have probably cameras affixed at key locations in Barbados, streamed through our website, through the BTMI and other assured websites that will allow a person to log on and see what's happening in Barbados. And I don't think you could have a better pictorial view of an ocean, wonderful sunshine, lovely beaches, clean as they are, and that you see, you get a sense of a photograph of or video of persons, tourists and locals alike, walking up and down the beach and experiencing it. And when we talk about technology, those are some of the areas that we have to delve into. But what it also does, it supplements our marketing, and I think that's one of your major points as well. How best can we utilize technology to help us leverage our marketing activities? Those are but a few. There are others that I can expand on, but I wouldn't want to delay. We are also going to be utilizing technology in-house, as I said earlier, for our licensing regime for the accommodation sector. That's actually the estimates to be done this year. But we also have to utilize technology because we have a lot of TDA applications coming our way. And it's a wonderful opportunity for us as well to, again, once again, use that platform to feed information into the relevant ministries. For example, what products are we buying? What are some of the products that we could potentially produce in Barbados, which would be of benefit to the Ministry of Agriculture. So those are about some of the programs that we have, pending for us to execute. I'm not here to say that we will accomplish all in 1 year. It's going to be impossible, but there are quite a few things that we believe that we can work on quickly to have what we call some quick wins. Thank you. I'm not sure if the BDMA, if you wish to add anything, Jens?
Thank you, Minister. Yes, I believe obviously we have tremendous opportunities to leverage technologies to become more efficient in terms of how we operate. But I also believe that we can't be managed by technology. Technology needs to be a means to an end. But when we look at technology, I think the first pillar is really data. So, yes, we're getting a lot of data right now, visitor arrivals and so on, but one piece of data that we have been using over the last few months is sentiment analysis. So via sentiment analysis, it gives us a good view of what people are enjoying in a destination and what they may have a concern about. We can also compare that to other competitive destinations. So that gives us a good indication of where we're doing well, which we may want to focus on when we promote the destination, but also where there might be concerns. I'll give you one example, which is a bit anecdotal, but I think interesting. We discovered that last winter, golf was trending downward, which seems a bit surprising because, Barbados is a great destination to play golf. Why is it trending downwards? The reason for that, when we did a bit more research, came because people came here to play golf, but they couldn't get a tee time because, it was hard to get a tee time, so their expectations weren't fulfilled. So we learned out of that we need to set the right expectations because that obviously can then go back and people share a negative experience on social media, which can portray the destination in a negative light. And there's just one example where we can leverage sentiment analysis also to build products and experiences and really connect with the operators and also see what other destinations are doing well or not so well, which we can leverage on. We also are starting or have started to use data from Visa and from MasterCard. The MasterCard went through the product execution unit via IDB, and we're just implementing that. That gives us spend data on island, which obviously is very powerful because that gives us also the ability to make better decisions. When it comes to virtual reality, so we are actually using a VR already at our trade shows, and it's really there to inspire people, entice them, it's a bit of a gimmick, but it is effective. It draws people to the booth, and it gets people excited, what they can do and might experience in Barbados. And with that, obviously, we're looking to highlight experiences that they may not be aware of, or that they may not even think they could have in Barbados. I'm, obviously new to the island, relatively new to the island. I didn't know that there's horse racing on the island, that actually the Garrison is the only horse racing racetrack part of a UNESCO site in the world. I didn't know that you can do motorsport and rally. So a lot of things that people might not be aware of, we can now integrate into VR and get people a glimpse and what they might expect in Barbados, which they cannot in other destinations. Overall, I think I mentioned AI before. We haven't used AI yet, but I think there's huge opportunities, as I mentioned, on the customer service side, especially with small businesses, to make sure that obviously when people come to these small businesses that might not have the resources, that they can provide the customer service that they might have. But also our product development team is very active in providing services to people that might have need help on the island. So that obviously could also be bridged by AI. AI can also be used obviously for data analytics very effectively. It can be used for content creation, but it also can be used for media buying. So we then are a lot more effective what keywords we buy, where we place our media to get a higher return on investment and reduce our marketing costs. So we still are working on that. We're at the very beginning stages, like many other people, but it's a huge opportunity. The last piece I say is a CRM. So we're obviously looking to build a CRM system, not just for visitors, but also for residents and diaspora, to really make sure that we can send relevant messages to people and connect them with the businesses for them to get an ability to send offers and deals, and for consumers then to get benefits. And that obviously creates then incentives for them to give us more and more data. The more data we have, the better relationship we can build. And you're an expert in that, so I'm not telling you anything new but it's an exciting opportunity for us to transform tourism for Barbados. Thank you.
I believe the CEO, Chief Executive Officer of the Barbados Port Inc. would wish to comment on the issue of technology as well. Please.
You did ask about tourism, but it would be remiss of me not to mention the use of technology in the port. The port community system is the most significant digital initiative currently being undertaken at the port. It is a critical infrastructural element and a reform tool for trade facilitation. Currently, there are a number of non-integrated logistics systems involving multiple forms, and depending on the type of import, many agencies. The release of cargo is currently being done through a combination of electronic, paperless processes, and this creates bottlenecks in the port in terms of clearances and costs. The PCS, Port Community System, will enable the electronic interchange and exchange of information between all port and logistics sectors, including the maritime single window, as well as the customs Escuda system, and so on. It will therefore reduce the costs of doing business at the port and increase efficiency. In addition to the port community system, there are also other systems already implemented. QR code is right across the port. Artificial intelligence is being used in our security systems. We have electronic payment systems that are already established. So there is quite a bit of technology and digitalization already implemented at the port.
Excellent. And the two key nuggets I think that jumped out at me, just in closing, Mr. Chairman, would be the use of the cameras that the minister would have alluded to. That would give a snapshot to those outside of Barbados as to activities. And I can see it being used on Kadooment Day, for example, when people are in their colorful costumes and parading down the streets. You can have those cameras that are broadcasting snippets of that so people can see what they're missing and obviously plan their vacation accordingly. And I think that also the virtual reality that was mentioned by the CEO and how you're using that, and that's really where it was actually leading the conversation, how you're using that outside of Barbados to whet the appetite of persons, potential tourists. I think that is tremendous as well, that a person can stand up in their Atlanta apartment or Atlanta mall or Connecticut mall, and they can actually put on a headset where they can receive a coconut from a coconut vendor and feel like they're right there and immersed in that type of an environment, that type of an experience, may actually whet their appetite significantly and draw them closer to our shores. So I am very excited about what I'm hearing. I commit to you and pledge to you my support as the ministry responsible for industry, innovation, science, and technology, relative to the cameras, relative to VR, whatever support is necessary for us to move our product out of Barbados and draw people in. You have my full commitment. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member for St. Michael North. Thank you, Minister. Christchurch East.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Minister, first, allow me to thank and congratulate you and your team for what is a very solid presentation. I think we've started well, so, but you do have a lot to be proud of, because if there's one thing we can see, and we can see easily, is the return of the visitors to Barbados. I mean, there was a period over the last couple of years when Barbados was empty and it looked bleak. And a lot of us thought we would never get back to where we were before. So I am glad to hear the reports and the empirical evidence of the numbers showing that we've made a significant recovery, and also the projections for the upward trending of the tourism sector. So I wish to say congratulations to all of those who worked hard to make this happen. Some of you are here, the faces of the industry are here, but not necessarily the other workers who are behind the scenes doing their part as well. So congratulations. Now, Minister, I just came back from what was a hard fought for vacation. And I had gone to the West Coast of the United States and to visit some people who had been coming to Barbados. They came for crop over about 6 or 7 years ago, and every year they're coming back. It's a larger and larger and larger group. And one of the things that struck me was how difficult it is to get to the western coast of the US. And I do know that when we factor tourism, or when Barbadians think of traveling overseas, we think immediately of maybe Miami and New York. And we tend to consider all the linkages from those two. But I'm just wondering what plans are there to investigate the possibility of targeting the western seaboard in the United States. One of the detractions there, one of the difficult aspects of that was the flight to Miami, the long layover in Miami, and then the onward trip further. Bajans will jump on a plane and go to England because it might be 8 hours, but it's 8 hours straight. And you get off and then you start to enjoy yourself. So I just want to know what is being investigated. Are we exploring that? A lot of them say that they go to Hawaii because it is an easy trip. But these same people go to Hawaii in the summer, right? And they would easily, from what I understand, look at coming to places like Barbados if the commute was a lot simpler. So I just wonder what is being explored in that direction, and is that a possible avenue to expand our catchment area?
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. What I can tell you that it has been tried before. It is a relationship that we will have to develop and build. The issue, as I indicated earlier, is the whole, this lack of human resources within the aviation sector, and therefore the deployment of aircraft would be done in such a way that would meet revenue managers' requirements. We are in discussions with some airlines to see if we can do a stop and drop arrangement from the West Coast. The West Coast has great promise. When I went to the ministry, the officials indicated to me that the West Coast is an area that we should have a marketing presence. We are currently addressing that issue. That marketing presence will also allow us to build out greater relationships with airlines. But we are in discussion with Atlanta-based entities to see if we can build out a proper air route into Barbados. I would perhaps be in a better position to comment more definitively There's another routes show that we have to engage the aviation people in. Once we are there and we engage them, we might be in a better position to understand whether or not they still have the appetite for a West Coast flight. Having said that, Copa Airlines also has a presence in Los Angeles, and therefore we can explore the possibility of Copa moving passengers from LAX into Panama and then onto. The issue, as you indicated, sometimes it's a layover, and that is the gap that we will have to bridge. There's no difficulty if we can commence a service. The issue will then be frequency, and can the airlines accommodate it? But I can assure you, honorable member, as I can assure all other honorable members, that it is on our agenda, and additionally, we're going to have to put an extra resource there. The one thing within the BTMI is that we need somebody as well to assist us on aviation matters, and that is top of the mind, and we are working through a program to address that. But it is on the cards. How long it will take to bring it to fruition, I can't say at this point in time. But a discussion with the airlines, as I indicated this morning, will be ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a bit more parochially though. I am excited to hear all the development that's going on, or proposed development for Barbados. But I noticed that we tend to have done nothing past Oistins. And there's a hotel, Silver Sands Hotel has been closed for quite some time. There's another hotel, Silver Rock, a bit further up from that recently closed down. So you have a couple of products that were in tourism that are now out of tourism and deteriorating. And it is interesting because one of the fastest growing things is the kite surfing. And in surfing, there's been a serious resurgence of that. There's a lot of interest in it. If you take a trip down that side of Barbados, Silver Sands, Inchmarlow, Long Beach side, you would have seen, a couple of weeks ago, you would see hundreds of kites in the air at the same time. But the persons don't have that much accommodation there. And so the product out there, it seems like the tourism has come to a stop at a certain point in time, a certain place in the island. I'm just making a pitch. I just want to know, is the South Coast being looked at past Oistins, between Oistins and the Crane, for more development? Are we looking at what to do with those derelict properties that were once productively into tourism? And if there's any plan for that, because apart from just putting more properties back into tourism that serve a certain sector of the market and a certain interest group in what could actually be a developing tourism initiative, I do believe we should be doing a lot more to promote kite surfing, etc. And yeah, I'm just curious to know what is the plan for that area, because some hotels out there, are some serious tourism investment out there would completely turn around that area, and I have a vested interest in it.
Thank you, and I know you're looking out for your constituents. The challenge, obviously, is that a lot of it is involved with private ownership. I do agree with you that we cannot allow what would have otherwise been very good hotel plan to just fall into state dilapidation. It is not good for the country. It's prime real estate. What we have to do, I think, we will have to certainly undertake an exercise to understand why the property remains in that state and why or what are the owners planning to do with it. I don't know the owners. It is something that I will have to research. But there are opportunities. If it's for sale, then there are persons, I'm sure, in Barbados, and there may be other investors who will be prepared to make an investment. But I don't have all the details regarding the Silver Sands and this hotel, former Silver Sands Hotel and Silver Point property, but I'll be happy to investigate that and to understand. Whenever we go on business abroad, there are persons who would ask us about any potential investment projects. And therefore, that is something that we always have to see. We are quick to tell them about sites that are available, but we're also quick to let them know the incentives that they could take advantage of if they come to Barbados and invest in a plant. But in respect of it, it's a great shame. Those properties should never have been in the condition they're in today. I give you my assurance, I will have to find out more about the properties in terms of whether for sale, and what is happening. But it is an opportunity for us, and I believe that we should seek to explore. North, or going south of the Oistins area. Obviously, you know that at Sam Lars there's a $450 million property. The Crane continues to build out opportunities there for investment as well, and they're always expanding their product. There's also the beach house that's part of the St. Philip area, if you're going to the east. But I think that that general area has a lot of other potential. I do agree with you that sea-based activities are the talk of the town. There are a lot of people who go to Silver Sands, they stay in villas in Silver Sands, they do Airbnb in Silver Sands because they want to be close to Silver Sands for all the activities. And windsurfing and kite surfing and that stuff. But it is an area that the BTA also promotes and they actively support it. There are a number of entities who will come to us with a plan and or initiative that we evaluate, and those are then executed. So I will have to do some additional information gathering to understand exactly what's happening in respect of those two properties.
And the last intervention, I noticed there were a fair amount of people from the BTMI in and floating around the island race, the Mount Gay Regatta thing. And the windsurfing and kite surfing was part of that. It was an adjunct to what was happening for the sailing week. And I just think that we need to look at the kite surfing and windsurfing as a potential industry partner for tourism. And possibly, I don't know, this might be a hybrid between you and sports, but the possibility of bringing a part of the tour to Barbados. A lot of Barbadians don't know that just before COVID, one of our own was ranked number 6 in the world. And he zoomed up the ranking, a fellow from Silver Sands, he zoomed up the ranking, I don't want to call his name now. And it's only the fact that COVID happened and crippled that tour that he's probably not world famous now. But we have great potential here, and there's a lot of interest. A lot of people come in December, January for the sole purpose of catching the waves and the wind, because it's very favorable climatic conditions there. We may want to look at seeing if we can leverage that to perhaps bring some leg of the windsurfing, kite surfing tour into Barbados and generating more publicity. So something to think about.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member, for the suggestions. I have noted the suggestions. As I indicated, the BTA, they're currently sponsoring some of those activities, but I do agree with you that we can have a more expansive approach, and perhaps we can, as part of our summer program as well, because certainly April and May, but beyond May, we could look at facilitating a specific event or adding that to, or expanding, I should say, the calendar of events to include those opportunities. So I'm sure that the others have taken note of it, and we'll be happy to add that to our calendar. And of course, we'll revert to you and let you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member for Christchurch East. Honorable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Chair. Minister, I want to first start by congratulating yourself and your team and previous ministers who served within this particular sector. And because what we are seeing in Barbados today, I think, is quite extraordinary. But I believe that notwithstanding the numbers that we are seeing, and I'm very, 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 very grateful, because as I look out my office onto Bay Street, Carlisle Bay, every day, I see thousands of people interacting with ordinary Barbadians, and I think that we all miss that very, very, very clearly. But I think this ministry, perhaps more than any other specific ministry in terms of a sector, clearly had the biggest negative impact of COVID-19. And it's something that we must appreciate, because there are people out there in the public who would want ordinary Barbadians to believe that we can just do away with tourism. But whilst a lot of the discussion today has centered around tourism activity, a couple of my questions I will focus on one of Barbados' strategic objectives, which relates to becoming a logistics hub, and therefore the Civil Aviation Authority as well as the maritime work that needs to be done to press ahead and get that plank of growth is going to be absolutely important. But I want to share with you, Chair, and the members of the chamber, just a few quick numbers, because most of the 32,000 persons who were unemployed were from the tourism sector during COVID. And the government of Barbados spent $143 million to give to the NAS so that those 32,000 persons during COVID could receive their NAS payments, because the fund, as I told you last week, the unemployment fund had been exhausted. The government also put $300 million into the BEST program, as you are well aware, Chair, and I'm sure, Minister, you're aware. $150 million was for working capital for a number of tourism-related entities, which is no small feat, but was a strategic decision, because whilst at the time we did not know when air travel will resume, we knew it had to resume at some point, and therefore the monies that we allocated for that, I believe, went a long way, not just for the properties to be kept in a decent state, because had they not been kept in a decent state, then we will not all be boasting today, rightfully so, as we should, because the government took a strategic decision to ensure that we protected the long-term interests of Barbados. We also set aside $150 million for digitization, green and other modernization efforts for the sector. And therefore, when people ask what the government did with the money, I think we can all see, the results of those strategic decisions that we took in relation to protecting the long-term interests of Barbados. And whilst I know that we would never ever want to see anything like COVID again, the government always stands ready to ensure that we can respond. Now, obviously, with no aircraft traveling, it meant that the airport itself needed support, because as you would appreciate, if planes are not landing, the airport can't make any money. We had to put some support in there. Needham's Point Holdings, we had to take over the debt facility for them during the pandemic. And therefore, when the members of the public, and I want to make it clear, Chair, that it is one thing to ask about the debt situation of the country. Now, which is fine, but the government had to make strategic decisions as to how it would provide for Barbadians. And I believe that this sector, notwithstanding all that we've been able to do, we now have to redouble our efforts to make sure that the sector brings the growth that we know that it can deliver. And therefore, Minister, I want to ask very specifically as it relates to the integration of tourism with agriculture and manufacturing, as well as the cultural industries. Because we all met and we agreed that coming out of the pandemic, that we need to ensure that the integration of tourism with the rest of the economy, that is a firm set of policies. And therefore I know that whilst, and I'll speak to in the follow-up question, Chair, as it relates to concessions, but I want to know what the ministry is planning to do this year to work with us to make sure then that we can make those integration, those links, mean something that is relevant, that I believe to ordinary citizens in agriculture, manufacturing, as well as the culture industries.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Let me also thank you, because you work within, you're the minister within the Ministry of Finance, and you have always supported all ministries, but in particular, the Ministry of Tourism. You've had to undertake and take a number of difficult decisions in order to build out and to ensure that the tourism sector will be ready for takeover when the country reopen to business in the tourism sector. So I want to place my thanks to you on record on behalf of the ministry. You have detailed several initiatives that you took. Those initiatives clearly were meant to reinforce and to ensure that we had the foundation for when we reopen the tourism sector. I am not, and I, like you, I don't worry about the critics who would wish to say that we have assumed significant debt. I think you have gone on record on multiple occasions, indicated what the debt profile was when we assumed office, and what we were able to take it to. COVID came along the way, and we had to ensure that we took care of people and that we took care of Barbados as a destination, and you did so well. We are still obviously below what the last administration would have left us with debt, but we also assume debt to ensure, for all the reasons you set out, why we had to differentiate ourselves and how we had to prepare ourselves. In fact, the money from the best part of the funding for the BEST program, which went into working capital, not only to maintain the operations, but also to ensure in the second half of the fund, to ensure we have greener hotels and with technology, but also to give hoteliers an opportunity to also build out and refresh their properties. I know some hoteliers took advantage of it and others didn't participate. The issue that we have in front of us has to do with the integration. And just about 3 weeks or so ago, I had a wonderful opportunity to have a meeting with a retired head of, I believe it was ICA here in Barbados, and she had brought a proposal to the ministry to discuss a concept known of agri-tourism. Of course, it is something that in the Gulf states, and where she also had an opportunity to do some work in the Gulf states, they're taking advantage of it. And the simple concept is, how can we take agriculture from the farm to the table? And then how can you then build out a manufacturing entity to build out such facilities? So it's tested. I've seen information on the model at work in the Gulf states, and we intend to pursue a similar model. What I can tell you, and my predecessor, Senator Lisa Cummins, would have had discussions with suppliers on the ground and also with officials within the Ministry of Agriculture. Those discussions were designed to enhance a regime whereby there are persons selling local produce can unsell them to the cruise ships. When I undertook a tour of the Bridgetown Port on Boxing Day, just to have a look at the cruise operation, much to my surprise, I saw a Barbadian company offloading a number of what we refer to in Barbados as ground provisions, and for the, I believe, Rhapsody of the Seas, that is a cruise ship that was imported at the time. And they were transporting the goods into the cargo hold of the vessel. That's one example that I know where there are a number of companies supplying cruise ships in Barbados. We need to get better at it. From my understanding, what has to happen, there has to be a consistency. Once there's consistency with the quality measurements in place, I think that's a wonderful market for us to continue to advance. So it started. We're going to have to build on it, working with the Ministry of Agriculture to see how best we can build out. The other concept in agriculture is, if we move from farm to table, is trying to ensure that local farmers have that wonderful opportunity in working with the Ministry of Tourism to continue that campaign, because it's something that started. We may not call it farm to table, but it certainly is in operation in Barbados already. But what we can do is to expand that to a macro level, which would then ensure that a lot of the produce that we have to supply, that we can supply to the tourism sector. We're known for supplying other things within the hotel sector. And of course, if you talk to any chef, they like to tell you that they like to work with fresh produce. So in a similar vein, they work with and get fresh fish. A similar thing has to be obtained with the Ministry of Agriculture, working with the farmers and other associate members. So it is an opportunity to build on. And like I said, it started particularly with the cruise ships. I saw the initiative, as I said, my predecessor would have been involved in, and it's something that we have to build out. But we have to bear in mind that it has to be consistent, and we have to take note of the quality, because that is what the emphasis will be on. The Permanent Secretary wishes to add some additional comments to my remarks. Go ahead, PS.
Thank you, Minister. In addition to the cruise ships, the ministry recently also had a discussion with an airline or persons in that industry, where there's also the opportunity to work with the Ministry of Agriculture to build cargo, where we note that the planes, they fly to Barbados, they come down full, really with persons who are visiting as well as locals returning. But then when they fly back north, the cargo hold is basically empty. And they have indicated to us that they welcome the opportunity to work with farmers, and in fact, they have also identified a particular product that they felt could be grown fairly quickly and be exported north on the plains when they fly back up. So that's an area that we will be working with the Ministry of Agriculture through the aviation sector now to be able to build out that particular opportunity to promote growth. Thank you.
Thanks, Honourable Member. I believe that we're going to have to put in train a specific intervention to track the tourism satellite account within the national statistics, to make sure that we can monitor this very carefully, because I believe that where public monies have been expended, and for good reason, that we need to ensure that the policy is actually working as intended. And I'm happy to hear that the work has started in relation to agriculture, because my next point and question relates to, as you know, under the BERT program, it is our intention to become a logistics hub right here in the region. And I know that whilst a lot of attention has been paid to tourism as the main part of this ministry, I believe that we really need to have a very aggressive and intense focus on the civil aviation, as well as the maritime opportunities that we can provide for Barbadians. Whether it's aircraft maintenance, whether it is maintenance of the yachts that sail the region. There's a whole range of, I know, and I was here earlier when the Director of Maritime Affairs was, when she was speaking. The reality is that whether it's the seafarers legislation and what that can bring opportunities for young people, I think that now that both sides of the coin, so to speak, as it relates to Barbados becoming a logistics hub is under the Ministry of Tourism. I would like to hear from you, Minister, and your team, what are the things that we're going to do within the next 12 to 18 months, in addition to what the government has already put on table with respect to the establishment of the African Exim Bank here to provide financing for trade purposes. What are we going to do within the next 12 to 18 months whilst we're working hard to bring the tourists here and build that out? What are we going to do to advance the cause of having Barbados become a logistics hub?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. What I'll do, I'll ask the Chief Executive Officer of the Barbados Port Inc. To respond to you, along with the General Designate for the Civil Aviation Authority. And I know that we also have some others from the airport who could also win, but I'll take the first two in the order of Mr. John Murray, followed by the Director Designate of the Civil Aviation Authority.
Thank you, Minister. I would have mentioned earlier that we are building out the hardware, expanding the port in order to be able to accommodate additional business in transshipment and more business as the economy also grows. So with respect to building out the North Cargo Berth, that is a project that's already underway. It will be accompanied by 2 modern new cranes and many straddle carriers. We have been having discussions for private sector entity in discussing being a free trade zone. We have the plans already for the build out of the container freight station, and we are discussing with the private sector members who are interested in working with us in developing Barbados as a hub, a major hub in the Southern Caribbean. We are also renewing our sister port agreements with various ports, and also we have draft agreements already submitted, for example, with the Port of Mombasa. We are looking to renew the agreements with Suriname, working with the Special Envoy in the Prime Minister's Office, as well as Miami and several other ports, and the various shipping lines and agents in Barbados. So they're still quite early in the game, but we are working towards having Barbados as a logistics hub in the Southern Caribbean.
But in addition to that, I may, if you leave, Sir Chair, perhaps as part of the logistics facilities, perhaps the CEO can also tell us about some of these stevedoring requirements, and then before we move on to the Director.
Thank you, Minister. By way of background, in the early 90s, 91, 92, Barbados Port, then Barbados Port Authority, working with its major and most important partner, the Barbados Workers Union, undertook a rationalization of labor at the port. And at that time, there were only private stevedores, a number of gangs operating within the port, and the concept of longshoremen and stevedores went out, and all port labor was employed by the port. The mantra, port work for port workers, was reinforced. This continued. Basically, the arrangements at that time, and are still in place today, is that the labor would be contracted by the private stevedoring companies to operate on board vessels. That arrangement continued for a number of years, a number of contracts signed between the Shipping Association of Barbados and the port. But there are some issues related to that arrangement. The port still has to acquire all the major cargo handling equipment. There were issues related to insurance. When there were accidents, there was often fights between the shippers and the port, and it only ended up in court, and the lawyers made the money. There were also concerns about the effectiveness of a management model in which a third party is managing port workers. So the decision was taken on the expiration of the contract this last time around that the management of stevedoring services should transition to the port. Basically, it was just a natural transition of a process that commenced from 1992, 30 plus years ago. In addition to, and we have been discussing this matter with the Shipping Association of Barbados and the shipping lines. We have invited the Shipping Association of Barbados to identify areas where we could collaborate and invest, because the stevedoring is transitioning to the port. The management of the stevedoring services is transitioning to the port. The workers are all port workers. They were all trained in stevedoring operations, and therefore it is a natural progression. At the same time, as this transition is taking place, and twin with the transition to providing the stevedoring services in-house, we have been in discussions with the Florida Shipowners Group, the umbrella body for the shipping lines that we trade with out of Florida, to move Barbados to becoming what we call a free out port. Free out port means that all charges will be collected locally. Currently, there's a hybrid system. Some port charges are collected locally, others are collected via the shipping agent from the line. This discussion commenced in earnest in 2019, disrupted by COVID, but now we are advancing the discussions once again. We have had a number of meetings with the Florida Shipowners Group Operations Committee. When we did visit Florida to meet with the cruise lines, we also met with that Operations Committee. And they've been pressing for us to move towards that free out port concept. We have looked at it and we've identified the port charges that are within the freight. And we expect them to come back to us this week. I spoke to the president during the lunch break of that association. He indicated that the presidents of the shipping lines will be meeting on Thursday morning, and he should hopefully have an answer, positive answer for us by Thursday afternoon. That should see, based on our numbers, a reduction in the freight by removing the port charges that are in the freight by $520 per 40-foot container. I've spoken to the president of the Chamber of Commerce. They're also in support of this initiative, but we'll have a conversation to ensure that this reduction in freight, some of which will be transferred to the port charges locally, but the reduction in freight, which will result in a reduction in the cost of cargo being handled through the port, will also redound to a reduction in the cost right down to the Barbadian consumer. So those discussions will be taking place so that by the 1st of April, we should see a reduction in the freight costs by the port charges, a slight increase in the charges from the port locally, but there will be an overall benefit of a reduction of costs, which is projected to be anywhere between 8 to 10% of the port costs. Yeah, this also, I will just speak, Minister, to the issue of port transformation. This is just one of the issues that we're addressing at the port, this particular natural progression to stevedoring, as well as to a free out port scenario. But we are also looking in the next 18 months, as mentioned by the member of Parliament here, to transition the port from the current BPI as the standard company owning all the assets, performing all the operations, into a port holding company. This would be what we call the second wave of corporatization. In 1979, let me just go back again, the Port Authority was created with the combination of Port Department and port contractors. By 2003, the company was reincorporated into Barbados Port, Inc. We are now moving towards having BPI as a holding company. This holding company will be owned by the state and by the workers and workers' representatives and the NAS, hopefully, our NAS. And there will be a number of subsidiaries reported into this company. And it's by the subsidiaries that we will be able to have a democratization of ownership in the port. These subsidiaries include a new cruise company, for example. Recall earlier that I said that Barbados Port took over the management of the Bridgetown Cruise Terminal, so we will have a separate company there. The aggregate berth will be an opportunity for Barbadians to invest. And the way that this will be done, and we've identified 9 possible companies for such operation, and it will be done obviously by preparation of business plans and issuing of IPOs, initial public offerings, to give the wider community and any member of the country the opportunity to subscribe, to invest in these various entities. The aggregate berth, the shallow draft marina project, the container freight station, at least 9 entities, even the port community system is a major issue that is ripe for investment. This is the second wave of corporatization. It is also the way we're democratizing the ownership interest in the port.
Director of Civil Aviation. Thanks, Minister, once again. First of all, I wish to start by stating that the air transportation sector indeed suffered from a crippling effect of the global economic downturn, but yet the resilience of the civil aviation has once again proven itself as evidence of recovery across the globe began to emerge back in 2021, and this trend would have continued through 2022. Reported as the worst downturn in history, Barbados has forged ahead, and tourist arrivals are steadily increasing during this winter season. But despite this trend, I wish to add that there are greater opportunities for Barbados, because this industry, which serves as a major catalyst for economic activities, must be supported within a sound policy framework in order to embrace the opportunity of industry reform. And this can be accomplished with the establishment of a Civil Aviation Authority as an aviation strategy. Its contribution indeed will propel the air transport sector and its related industry. Another strategy that was pursued during the period of COVID was the manner in which the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport redirected its marketing efforts through innovative means, which allow business opportunities to be explored in many regions across the globe through the successful negotiation with air services agreements as well. And this strategy will bring about more routes to the state. It would expand the main direct routes with connections beyond non-stop cities for our major market blocks as well. The adding of routes would ensure a consistent flow of trade to and from Barbados' major gateway. But during the period of COVID, we recognize that this crisis also precipitates opportunities. And during that time, the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport determined that the new suite of civil aviation legislation will be passed in Parliament, which will create the Civil Aviation Authority. Indeed, the department has commenced its transition to the Civil Aviation Authority as recommended by ICAO, and as a signatory to the Convention on International Civil Aviation, Barbados is generally bound by the requirements of the Convention. In response to the international standard, the Civil Aviation Authority is established to assist Barbados in strengthening its capabilities in the management of safety through a structural process. The object for the Civil Aviation Department, however, goes beyond the establishment of the Civil Aviation Authority. Our main goal is to achieve aviation reform and to implement a civil aviation sector improvement program. And indeed, we have started this journey. Today, we have embarked on this exercise through the delivery of a suite of aviation laws, and this was necessary to ensure that the civil aviation sector in Barbados is well regulated and compliant with the national provisions and the international requirements. Now, the passing of the legislation would indeed be a game changer because it demonstrates to the global aviation industry Barbados' highest level of commitment to make aviation a priority sector in its national policy, planning, and development. Now, the establishment of the Civil Aviation Authority is important for a number of reasons, mainly for the technical purposes, but for wider economic benefits as well. First and foremost, the civil aviation sector plays a vital role in commercial business enterprise and aviation infrastructure. It generates economic growth, it creates jobs, it promotes training opportunities, it facilitates international trade, tourism, and investment. Therefore, part of the authority's mandate is to contribute and guide the development of the local air transport sector. With its new corporate governance, the authority will be in a position to support the airport, the airlines, and the various subsectors in their operations and to meet other aviation and tourism business priorities. So all in all, the benefits of this institutional arrangement is to support essential business industries. So the expectation here in sum is that with the Civil Aviation Authority, a number of projects, a number of expansion projects will be driven. Projects which entails the construction of new cargo facilities, the creation of aircraft maintenance organizations, upgrade to the passenger terminal building and its various facilities, including baggage. The rehabilitation works on the airport runway, aprons, and taxiways, the replacement and preventative maintenance on air drone lightings, landing aids, and other systems, and other capital development projects will be facilitated by the Civil Aviation Authority's support. So there are great expectations that Barbados has an industry that, if allowed to operate at its full potential, can offer something special to boost cargo, to attract more passengers and airlines to pass through our international airport. This will lead to improved development and the expansion of commercial business enterprise. It will enhance the usage of our airport. It adds another revenue stream to Barbados as well.
Thank you very much, Director. You were almost on the crease, so I thought you would intervene.
You were mashing the crease.
I thought I would intervene before the chair called you, but thank you very much for that expansive response. And to honorable member, these are part of the plans that we have. There are some additional plans, obviously, because we're still in negotiation state, we can't discuss, but we believe that there's a wonderful opportunity, as you have correctly identified, to build up Barbados to become a hub. And other announcements, as you are aware, honorable member, will be following. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The only thing I didn't hear was when we can get the revenue from Trinidad, but I will leave that for another day.
Would you wish us to have a quick response?
No, it's fine, it's fine. It's fine. Last question, Chair. I had an opportunity to visit the mission in Geneva in early December. And the thing that struck me when I was there was that it was not immediately obvious that the people who live in the immediate surroundings in Geneva were aware that Barbados had a mission in Geneva. Now, I know that the mission in Geneva obviously has a very specific objective to the United Nations. But I believe that if we are going to leverage our activity, and this is a relatively large residential area. So as far as I'm concerned, we should treat that as Barbados. And therefore, in the context of us being able to ensure that we are promoting not just visitors to Barbados, but obviously we also want people to do business, as someone raised the welcome stamp earlier as a potential opportunity. We want people to do business in Barbados. And therefore, and someone mentioned an audit earlier in relation to the local tourism product. But what I want to ask, Minister, is what will the ministry do to first and foremost remedy the situation that I observed in Geneva, where I don't know what type of marketing you can do, but if people are just walking past the place every day, they should at least know that Barbados is just beyond their imagination. That's number one. And two, how they can get to Barbados if they so desire for vacation. But equally, three, how they can do business in Barbados or with Barbados, because I also, during that trip, had the occasion to drink some extra oil at a function that was put on by the local distributor. And their intent, obviously, to be able to help boost the rum exports. So I think that the coordinated approach with working not just with the missions, but with industry and the like, that we can do two things: bring people to Barbados, but also bring our products to these areas. And therefore, I would like to hear what the ministry is going to do in terms of ensuring that wherever Barbados has a presence in the globe, physically, that we have a very aggressive program to sensitize the persons in the immediate surroundings for where we're operating, so that that subtle marketing, if you like, can be done, that we can track how many people are actually coming from these areas in order to determine how effective our marketing campaign actually is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. As I indicated in my presentation earlier this afternoon, we are making some major decisions to strengthen our presence through directors of markets, senior business development officers, and business development officers in our what we consider to be new and emerging markets. And therefore, in every station and every country where we have a diplomatic presence, we will be expanding our reach. For example, I mentioned this morning that we are going to have a presence, sales and marketing presence in Panama. The rationale for that is to tap into that that market that has a lot of wealth, great travel trends based on our research. And we're going to have a dedicated team, not only there, but also to reach into South America as well, because we believe that we have to tap into areas such as Brazil and also Argentina and Uruguay and all the surrounding areas. So we're going to have a presence in those areas. I made a point as well this morning that we're going into the UAE, where there's a mission in Abu Dhabi, and you know, in accordance with the rules, we have to have our officers stationed where there's a diplomatic presence. And the reason why we want to go into UAE, because we consider that a new and emerging market. We've done some work in the Gulf states. We are going to continue to push some work, not only the Gulf states, but we're going to see where we can reach out to the Pacific as well, so we can bring additional business to the market. I do take your point in respect of Geneva. I will double check, because I believe there is a reason why there's not a representative there, but I'll double check that and come to you. I don't have it top of mind. But safe to say that all of the markets will be fully engaged. The BTMI is a very small organization. It only consists of approximately, about 90 or so employees, of which we have a number of them deployed abroad. We have addressed some vacancies in some of the markets, and those obviously would have been addressed. And I should say we are continuing to address those and where there are vacancies in the market. But I give you the assurance, as we continue to build out arrival numbers, we have to engineer our presence in market. We have to do exactly what you're saying to ensure that we have people on the ground, that we have our products on the ground, that we have not only a display or a signboard or a showcase, but we have to do what we've been good at. That is highlighting and showcasing Barbados in the marketplaces. I think that once we get there and we have the presence in these new and emerging markets and strengthening some of the internal mechanisms that we require, I think we will begin to see what is required of us in terms of delivering the numbers. This job carries a significant weight on my shoulder, only because I know of the importance for you, Honorable Member, as Minister in the Ministry of Finance, and of course the Governor's Central Bank, the Statistical Service Department, and others who rely very heavily on this sector, not to mention the thousands of hotel workers who have a significant stake in this business. So there's a significant weight on my shoulder. I hope I can carry it well, and I hope I'll be able to deliver what I intend to deliver. But it would not be for the lack of effort or trying, and I'm confident that once we initiate those series of actions, as I've indicated throughout my presentation, that we can see additional growth in Barbados' tourism. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thank you, Honorable Member for Christchurch East Central. Honorable Member for St. Michael Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to the Honorable Minister and to his entire team at Tourism. I, too, would want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues as well in terms of thanking all of you for allowing us to get through a very difficult period, particularly during the height of the pandemic, and also to extend thanks as well to all of the workers within the sector also. I think that this particular session is particularly important because I think all Barbadians from the youngest age right through has always been told that tourism is our business and that we all have a role to play, that is we must play our part. The pandemic, however, has obviously demonstrated that we have to build back stronger and that it is not business as usual, that people have choices. And in many cases, we saw during the pandemic, a lot of people deciding that they wanted to stay within their own destinations or to travel closer to home. It therefore means that as we build back stronger, that we have to look at a few things, I believe, in the Barbados' tourism industry. And one of those things, a lot has been said earlier in terms of the attractions, in terms of looking at what Barbados has to offer. Mention was made in terms of the product offerings, looking at what we sell to the rest of the world. Obviously, we are competing with all the other destinations in the Caribbean. And therefore, my simple question is whether we have really seriously evaluated the product offerings, and in particular, our attractions. Mention has been made about attractions in the context of community tourism, as well as the larger attractions. As a Barbadian who often, when my family come to the island and tourists, I am struggling to try to find the attractions on island to be able to take them to. Sometimes it's the same attractions over and over. And I'm just curious what efforts are being made specifically to target some of the entities that have perhaps emerged during the pandemic, to give support to small businesses and small entrepreneurs who have pretty much stepped out of the box to create some niche areas, because in a lot of cases, this is what it has to be about going forward, finding Barbados' niche markets, finding Barbados' niche industries and businesses and supporting them. Also, I heard earlier that there was a focus on doing some audits, and in particular, there was mention about Rihanna Drive, there was mention about going into specific communities. I'm not sure how advanced that data is, but I honestly believe that sometimes we wait too long in order to collect data. And the truth is that the market sometimes has already determined where we ought to be spending and placing our efforts. So if you take what the previous member had spoken to in terms of Rihanna Drive, you have a situation where we have the largest selling recording artist in the world from this little rock, an area in Westbury where it has now attracted so much attention. And for me, I can perhaps, just from driving through the area, I know there's not a lot of spaces for us to set up new ventures. But the question, therefore, is when how much of an audit do you really need to do to determine that, apart from the roads having been done recently, I know, and that has brought a lot of relief to the residents. What about looking at the area, say, that from the port to Rihanna Drive, for instance, looking at how we can improve that area? Because that certainly could be an area where persons can walk from the port to the destination. Equally, if you take the area by Pelican, I think both administrations would probably say that that area is perhaps the most desolate area that exists walking to Bridgetown. Our tourists want to get to Bridgetown, but the truth of the matter is there's nothing really along the route to interest them in order to walk along the area of the coastline in order to get to town. And therefore, I would like to just ask the Honorable Minister to perhaps point out what are some of the initiatives specifically that will allow particularly the cruise ship passengers who are getting off of the ships, going to these particular two destinations, whether Rihanna Drive or to the Pelican Villages and going to Bridgetown. What are we doing specifically to be able to improve those particular locations as a destination?
Thank you, Honorable Member. I will weigh in, but I will also ask Ms. Nicole Aline, who spearheads the National Tourism Program, to engage in the discussion with us this afternoon to answer some of your questions. In respect of evaluating the tourism product offerings, I think there are a number of factors that we will have to take into consideration. The product itself, if you look at the physical plant, there's still some work to be done. I am aware that there are hotels that reinvest in their maintenance and their plant on an annual basis, and we commend them for doing so. There are others who will set aside a percentage of their annual revenues to continually refresh and to enhance their properties. And the concessions that we have provided as a government through the TDAA and other concessions that are available are designed to ensure that we can ask or encourage those in the accommodation sector to improve their physical plant. Now, I come from a background where I worked for a public company and spent most of my life working in hotels. And I can also tell you that when you devise a strategy where you invest and reinvest in the hotel plant annually through a percentage of your income as capital expenditure, or you decide to do a major refurb after a given number of years, you can always see the return of your investment because you see it in terms of increased room revenue. And that is a strategy that has to be adopted by all hotels. There's some of the hotels in the smaller hotels who will need additional help, and we are working to see how best we can devise a plan to help them to refurbish their hotels, notwithstanding we have the small hotel funds available to see how best we can work with them. But we can take very small hotels and we can convert them into highly luxurious boutique properties with significant offerings and also with a significant return on their investment. As you look around, there are small boutique hotels in Barbados, and I dare say that I don't think they do too badly on occupancy and rate. And that is designed for a market who would not wish to go into maybe larger properties. So I do share your view. We have to continuously evaluate, but we have all of the concessions and all of the available incentives in place for persons to take advantage of such opportunities. In respect of what we can do in Rihanna Drive, before I ask Ms. Aline to come to and speak, we're always aware that there are opportunities for growth. I know that the port is also engaged in a program for some planned expansion and also some interest in some real estate around surrounding areas that could also accomplish the objective where we can either have a holding bay for taxis, where we can have a park and ride operation, where we can have bus tours, where we can have taxi tours, where we can even go to the extent of having walking tours to Rihanna Drive, just using that as an example. So there are a lot of ideas where I think we can leverage. A lot of it will have to be commercially driven. Some of it will be embedded in government policy. But I'm sure that we can continue to make the case to those in the accommodation sector and those in respect of attractions. I also indicated in my opening remarks that we have to have a proper evaluation of our attractions. We are going to be conducting a review and a competitive review because it's important that we have that competitive review. Once we see where we are versus our competition and where there are niches that we could potentially exploit and create other available opportunities and create additional attractions, we will also do so. But I will ask Ms. Nicole Aline to speak to some of the matters you've raised as well. Ms. Aline?
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon again, everyone. When I spoke earlier, I spoke to the National Tourism Program, which is an IDB financed initiative. And under that program, directly to the question that the Deputy Prime Minister raised in relation to the stretch of road coming from the port and going along Traverse Way, what incentivizes the visitors to make them want to walk that way. Now, under the National Tourism Program, we have component 1 where we're developing 9 new tourism products. And these products all focus on our cultural heritage, and essentially the National Tourism Program is about diversifying our product offering, creating additional interest in our destination as a means of raising our revenues. Cognizant of all of what has been said in here this afternoon in terms of needing to refresh our product, needing to find additional ways to increase cruise passenger spend, as well as the expenditure coming from our stay-over visitors. So some of these products, honorable members, focuses on Bridgetown, and one of them is the Traverse Way area. We have recognized that that area, as you quite correctly said, is lonely. And so one of the interventions we will be making on that stretch is to install lighting, as well as to improve the aesthetics some more. It's already nicely landscaped, but some improvements can be done, as well as install portable facilities, bathroom facilities for persons using that stretch, and just generally to upgrade the area to make it more welcoming and to reduce the risk of safety, the safety risk element that is there. So that is one intervention being done under the National Tourism Program. And I'm happy to say that right now we are at the design and supervision stage of that consultancy, along with some others which I'll speak to in a moment. Those consultancies, we've just gotten our date back from the Special Tenders Committee in terms of a publishing date when we can send out our request for expressions of interest for firms to send in the EOIs, the expressions of interest, to create the designs for those these new products. Also in the Bridgetown area is another one called the Tourist Urban Route. That's just a shortened name, but it is essentially a walking tour that draws to and showcases our historic, our UNESCO World Heritage Property, historic Bridgetown particularly, and it also takes the opportunity to install seating, street furniture, really make Bridgetown a welcoming place. Right now, most of us just come in and out. You're come down because, you just come to get something from a store and so forth. But really, it's our dream, it's our vision to make it a place of relaxation, to make it a place of recreation, and the National Tourism Program aims to create these interventions, whether it is greening, aesthetic improvements along the route. And this route starts at the Cheapside area and traverses a number of our unique roads here within Bridgetown, which really form the basis on which we have been inscribed on this UNESCO World Heritage listing. And we really want to showcase it to the world and to show to persons what it is that distinctly makes us Barbadians, and to create something new that may not have known about. So it also speaks to installing interpretive signage as well that allows persons to walk at their own pace if they want to take do the walking tour, or if they want to have a vehicular tour as well. So that's another intervention to bring a freshness to our capital city, and at the same time to showcase something that is distinctly and uniquely Barbadian. The other intervention within our Bridgetown area references a visitor center which will be located just nearby here, back down to Cheapside in the old town hall building. And that visitor center is going to be an area where persons come in and they get that snapshot as what is the Barbadian product? What are the things that I can see when I come here? And it's not just for visitors, but of course it's open for our locals to have an opportunity to educate themselves, for our school children as well, to learn a lot more of our history, something that the academics, the school teachers and so forth have identified as a deficiency in our school area in terms of the lack of local history that persons are unaware of here in Barbados in our school system. And then sited on the first floor of the Old Town Hall building will be an art gallery, which will showcase the work of our local artists and create an opportunity for them to have additional revenue outside of, traditional seasons, whether it's at maybe the Oysters Festival or Whole Town Festival, but to have another space where we highlight the work of our local artisans in the various media that we have that constitutes our cultural industries. Going back to even the question that Minister Strawn asked earlier in terms of how we infuse and how we integrate tourism with our cultural industries. So these are some of the initiatives that are being undertaken specifically in the Bridgetown area under the National Tourism Program. I see the chair looking at me, so I'll end here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the response. Again, I just want to make it very clear that a lot of times I think the tourism strategy has to also be built around what already exists. And I say that perhaps as a former rum shop owner. And one who focused a lot on the experience that tourists had when they came to Barbados. A lot of tourists like the idea of being able to do what locals do and to do so in a safe environment. And I would hope that the ministry starts to look more in terms of strategizing around those types of products that already exist within communities, whether it's the references made by the Honourable Member for St. Thomas or others, where there are already activities taking place that attract locals. The truth is that we have a lot of people who are first-time visitors, but we also have a lot of people who are repeat visitors. And the more comfortable you become, you tend to, get along with people on the island, and then you explore a bit more what is happening on the island. I think right now, Oysters perhaps is one of the biggest tourist attractions that we have, and we should really ask ourselves why. And I think it is because tourists are getting the opportunity to mix with Barbadians, to be able to share a rum and coke, as opposed to having to pay a higher price in a hotel. They're getting the opportunity to learn the local language, but also to be able to gyrate and walk up, as we would say. So it is the experience that people are looking for, and I think that we have to do more to be able to create those experiences, whether it is how do we make Barbadian fish cakes and being able to show them exactly how they're made or bake, being able to show them, for instance, how to actually make the rum punches and things like that are obviously, a feature of Barbados. So I just want to reemphasize that I really do feel the strategy has to be built around what exists in a safe environment. And I'm encouraged by the fact that some thought has already started in relation to those two areas. I don't think we can pay for the marketing that Rihanna has been able to bring to the island. And my next question really as a follow-on from that is whether we have started to look at very strategic initiatives in terms of the marketing of Barbados with the Rihanna brand, and in particular with her people, because I do feel that we don't have to pay a lot, but obviously the little things that she does become very big things to the rest of the world. And I think that Barbados really has to position itself to capitalize on a lot of the mentions that she makes of the island, and to be able to direct people through its product offerings to the island as well.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I do concur
with your views. The Chief Executive Officer of the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. will speak to it, but I also would wish to also remind the Chamber that we are also partnering with another young Barbadian, Zane Maloney, who's done exceptionally well and who's graduated, I think, into Formula 2 or I think it's Formula 2 now. I think it's into 2. I stand corrected. Don't want to mislead the House. But we are also partnering with him to ensure that we get our name out there. As you know, he's done well on the international arena. I had the opportunity when I became Minister of Tourism to go to Bushy Park at a function which celebrated his success. Very humble young man, but also detail his story. And I think that he's also one of the iconic persons that we have to utilize. I'm not sure of the right choice of word, but to utilize and also to ground within our marketing efforts within the BTMI. I know that a number of initiatives have been explored with Rihanna and her management team. I would also like to ask the Chief Executive Officer of the BTMI to speak to this matter. But wherever possible, we can use very iconic, very strong brands to help us with our marketing. As I indicated earlier, Rihanna is one of our best brand ambassadors. Wherever she goes, she carries the Barbados flag. She demonstrates her taste of Barbados experience, and she's always promoting Barbados. And that is something, frankly, we can afford to pay. But I do agree that there's certain areas now where we have to become more strategic, and that is what I'm about. Where do you position such iconic brands for the benefit of the island? I'll pause here and I'll ask the Chief Executive Officer of the BTMI, Mr. Jens Strainhart, to have a few comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. Yes, as it relates to Rihanna, obviously what we have done during the Super Bowl in the US market, we partnered with various watch parties to really promote the halftime show performed by Rihanna, and that was very successful. On island here, we partnered with the US Embassy to bring together the watch party here on island, and then also the BTMI hosted a Super Bowl watch party at Oistins, which was very successful. And the reason why we chose Oyston is exactly what you just alluded to, Prime Minister, to really showcase that local experience. We could have done it anywhere, but we felt that Oystins would be the perfect venue to do so, and that is very much aligned in terms of what you're talking about. I mentioned earlier that now we're also looking to take Rihanna Drive, if you so will, on the road, and have just designed a booth for our trade shows around Rihanna Drive, and I think that also will differentiate Barbados in a different light, not just as a beach destination like all other competitors in the Caribbean, but telling a different story. And obviously that connects, because many people may know Rihanna, but they may not know that she actually is from Barbados. So I think we'll kind of looking to close that gap more. And we have now seen that people that come actually from the cruise boats, and I just had breakfast with someone just yesterday a tourist who was on the cruise boat, and he said, well, you know what, a lot of people actually walk from the cruise boat to Rihanna Drive and then to Kensington Oval. And there's a lot more opportunities to enhance that. I want to just make one quick point to your earlier question. So we just actually finished a product audit for our tourism product. That obviously was a big project. It is just being finalized now. And the idea really is to collect data, obviously, on our tourism-related establishments, with regards to location, establishment, and attraction type. So that's important to get really a picture of what we have in what location. Then also develop a database of visitor activities, access the number of rum shops and convenience stores on the island, identify key challenges experienced by visitors, related establishments. It could be lighting, garbage, accessibility, and accessibility is a whole other opportunity that we're looking to explore. And then also, interestingly enough, and I think the Prime Minister mentioned doing estimates, social media presence of various establishments, because many visitors and also residents, they look at social media in terms of what these establishments have to offer, or just if they're open. So I think we want to make sure that we know what establishments have social media and maybe how we can help them from a capacity building standpoint. So that's very quickly just following up on your earlier question there. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarity on that. Again, it is very important, especially for, Barbadians listening to this conversation really want to know what is in it for them, and really how can they benefit from all that you're doing within tourism. And I think that those types of audits will allow us to drill down to the issues of marketing and product alignment in terms of where we want people to go, whether they're safe. So I look forward to that work being done. The last question that I have, though, relates to the issue of the airport and the infrastructure at the airport. I've seen the changes at the Grantley Adams International Airport over the years. I was remarking to one of my colleagues earlier that I remember when the kiosks on the outside, there were so many vendors on the outside of the airport, and we've actually seen that transition over the years where you just have a lot larger concessions, but obviously a lot more space, and it's a little bit more tidy. Recently, we would have had some concerns, and the minister alluded to it earlier, in terms of the lights on the runway at the airport. That situation has obviously been addressed thanks to the minister and to the team there. But I want to just spend a little moment, perhaps just asking the minister to just give a perspective in terms of where we are with the maintenance at the airport. And the reason I'm asking, I think most Bajans can appreciate that during COVID, obviously we were not in a position to maintain perhaps and to do the things that were needed to be done, as we would have liked. There were issues in terms of the supply chain. So we are all very familiar with some of the challenges that the airport would have also encountered, just like every other Barbadian. But I think that the question perhaps being asked by persons looking to come to the destination and also the average Barbadian is really, where do we stand now in terms of what have we learned from what we have experienced and also what we learned from this experience recently. It is okay for us to say that, this happens in other territories, but the truth is we only have one runway. So we don't have other options in terms of where else we redirect planes if something like this happens. And in speaking to the minister on the few days when this occurred, it was clear that even with best efforts, there were some challenges in terms of the time that the technical team were able to go onto the runway in order to carry out the necessary works. Obviously, in addition to that, you get the complaints from time to time about maybe sometimes the door is not working, the conveyor belt is not working. And of course, these are some of the things that people see from the time they land on island. These are the experiences that can make the difference for a visitor coming to the island for the first time. And it also sometimes can frustrate as well persons who are returning home. So I don't think the visitors are alone in terms of the concerns. So I would just like the minister and the team to perhaps address, what we have come through, where we are right now. And I know there are obviously efforts being made, I'm sure, to be able to make sure that this situation is put on the address over the course of the next few months.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Thank you for raising that. I did allude to some, as you indicated, some of the challenges we had in respect of the runway. Now, let me just put it in its proper context. It is not that the entire airport, and this is not for your benefit, but for benefit of wider Barbados, it was not that all the lights at the Grantley Adams International Airport were out of service. Yes, some persons would have passed there, saw the runway lit like a Christmas tree, and asked, well, what is the problem? The issue has to do, I'm going to put it in, I'm a layman, so I'm going to put it in layman's language and allow the engineers to expand. The issue related to what you refer to as the runway edge lights. Those are the white lights at the left and right of the runway. And let me also tell Barbadians that the Grantley Adams International Airport has one of the longest runway strips in the world. we have 11,500 feet of runway at the Grantley Adams International Airport. In fact, the airport was also, the extension of the runway was also so designed that if we had to receive the shuttle and it had to land in Barbados, that it could land and take off at the Grantley Adams International Airport. We all are aware that it was recently resurfaced. The issue with the runway edge lights, and the Director of Civil Aviation Authority would also speak on this matter as well as Ms. Karen Walks, who's head of engineering at the airport. The runway edge lights must be working, and they must be working must be lit certainly after sunset for aircraft to land and take off in Barbados. The issue, as a result of the electrical fault, caused and the cables to be burnt, and therefore we had to take a redirection of some of the cables. I'm pleased to tell you, and perhaps the chief engineer will give you more details, that they worked around the clock, as you said, honorable member notwithstanding, they had to work in between the landing and taking off of flights to restore the matter. The cabling, almost all of it, was restored, and the lights that we have there are all in working order. The issue with the spacing of the lights, there are international guidelines which mandates that you must have the runway edge lights lit within a certain distance. And because of that fault, it triggered some lights to be out of service, and as a result, we have our reputation to maintain in Barbados. We have our safety record to maintain. I will also add that there is a system in place, a maintenance system in place, where the airport authorities, the maintenance team, the team is required to check the runway every day. There are multiple checks. On the electrical side, they go on the tarmac and they check at least once a day to ensure that all the lights are working on the runway as well as the taxiway. They have to do this because it is a requirement of their operation. There are other teams, of course, that go onto the tarmac and drive onto the taxiway and the runway, obviously when you don't have traffic landing here, and to also check to see if there are any defects, any debris on the runway, so that they can clear it, so that we can maintain that excellent safety record that we have touched with. They also have a system where there's an early warning, an alarm system that would be triggered in the event that certain lights are not working. When that is triggered, they also have the opportunity to repair and or replace lights. So I just want to put it in its proper context in respect of what happened at the Grantley Adams International Airport, not only for members of the House, but for the others. I have gone on record. I've thanked the Chief Executive Officer, the electrical teams, the engineering teams, the air traffic controllers, for all and others for all the work they have done. The air traffic controllers also can turn on the lights, and they work with the Grantley Adams International Airport to secure the airport. So I said all of that to say that when I saw it, I asked the questions, the hard questions. I actually was on site to make sure I have an understanding of the issue and also to make sense of what was happening. But I'll ask and let me also apologize for the absence of the Chief Executive Officer of the Grantley Adams International Airport, Mr. Hadley Bourne. He's unable to be here with us because he's obviously on tour with respect to a national security matter on behalf of the country, so he's not with us this afternoon. But I will ask Ms. Karen Walks, engineer at the airport, head of engineering at the airport, to have her say, and then I will also call on Ms. Tracy Ford Bailey to give us her perspective as head of the Civil Aviation Authority. Mrs. Walks.
Good afternoon. My name is Karen Walks. I'm Director of Engineering, Gaia Inc. To put it in further, the Minister has actually covered quite a bit, has not left much for me to say. But to put it in further context, we actually would have had a long period of economic downturn, and we're in a period of recovery going through 2017, 2018, 2019. Then we had COVID. So we would have been deferring replacements and major maintenance at the airport for quite a period of time. And many of our systems are actually past their original planned useful life. So we have actually engaged in quite a lot of maintenance. I know people see that they are systems and the systems are failing, but the equipment is actually quite aged, and we are doing quite a good job based on the comments we get from international persons regarding keeping these systems operational. Going forward, we are working with the ministry our main ministry. We're working with the Ministry of Finance. We are looking at what developmental projects and replacement projects would fall to the private, the PPP partner, which is a program that's ongoing in terms of identifying and implementing a PPP arrangement for the management of the airport, and also to identify what are critical issues that need to be addressed in advance of that arrangement being put in place. In our estimates, we have identified the replacement of scanners, the replacement of generators as being two of the most critical items that need to either commence and complete replacement during this year to ensure the continued operations of the airport. In terms of the airfield works, persons would know that we did do a pavement replacement project, and whilst that project would have replaced some of the cables, conduits and cables on the runway, it did not replace all of them. There are over 55,000 linear feet of cabling, underground cabling, just associated with the runway systems alone, and that excludes the taxiways and aprons. Of these, about 40% represents old cabling, and we are preparing a report to the minister and ministry where we are going to implement a planned replacement of all of this cable rather than awaiting any failures. To understand the runway system, we have what we call a constant current regulator, which basically means that to maintain the current on the electrical system, the voltage is ramped up. So where you get any faults on the system, which would drop the current, the system forces the voltage up. So we operate at quite high voltages, which creates safety issues for our electrical teams, and also means that if there are any defects in the cabling or conduits or the insulation around those cables, the temperatures get very hot, and any defects might result in melting, we call it burning, but melting of the cables. And that is what would have happened over the period from the 13th, 14th, and 15th. The team was able to implement a bypassing of the areas where that failure occurred, and we were able to bring the lights back up to allow for operations, and then over the course of the remaining period, to institute a replacement of those underground cables. That work is expected to be completed tomorrow. In terms of mitigation, we are restocking the cable that we would have used. We are looking at the acquisition of 100% redundancy solar lights for the runway edge light circuit. We have in our possession, and we had actually started to roll out replacement of the LED, the incandescent edge lights with brand new LED lights, which would drop the voltage and the temperatures at which the systems operate. We are looking to also implement a more rigorous early alarm system and a planned cable replacement program for the airport. But that is all going to be included in a report, which is to be submitted to the ministry today.
Thank you. We ask Mr. Tracy Ford Billy.
Thank you, Minister. First and foremost, in a complex environment, limitations and challenges are expected, but a decision to close the runway was made last week accordingly. In the aviation environment, the safety of operations is always the most important element of all engineering activities. Still not here? The critical need is to ensure that the proper operation of the airport lighting system, the communication, navigation, and surveillance equipment is well managed and serviced according to the international standards. Now, the scenario that occurred on Tuesday and Wednesday evening presented some concerns, and some questions were posed regarding the runway lighting and the unserviceability of the edge light. Now, in this particular circumstances, the aerodrome ground lighting system failure means losing the runway lights that makes it impossible to maintain any flying operations freely and safely. Therefore, such a scenario should be minimized to avoid a major disruption to airport and airline activities. Following the disruption, meetings were held to discuss the contingency planning or steps to be undertaken to have some highly reliable permanent air fuel lighting systems, if possible, and to minimize the system's failure or to prevent failure to both circuits servicing the runway edge lights, which is, of course, one of the contingency plans. The goal here is to ensure that Barbados implements the base of multiple safeguards against a total or partial failure of the system. And this is going to be very critical during the aerodrome certification exercise to be conducted by the Civil Aviation Department, as well as the international civil aviation bodies. These systems will be audited, and the report must reflect the strategies to have levels of protection against an entire system failure. And this occurrence was evaluated with the hopes that an integrated air traffic management system can meet the international standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you to the team. I think Barbadians and certainly those looking to travel to Barbados will be a lot more comforted tonight after hearing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member for St. Michael Southeast, Honorable Member for St. Andrew,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Firstly, I would like to add my voice to the chorus of praise and congratulations to you and your team for engineering this tourism rebound that we are currently experiencing. Coming out of COP26, the UN Climate Change Conference, and the subsequent launch of the Glasgow Declaration on Climate Action, many countries were encouraged to incorporate climate action into their tourism sectors. Emerging from that said conference, our very own Prime Minister has become a leading voice in climate justice, a leading voice in climate sustainability. And this has placed on Barbados tremendous responsibility as a leader in any initiative that supports climate action in the region, and if not globally. My question, therefore, is what is the ministry doing to promote sustainable tourism in Barbados? What are some of the practices that the ministry has engaged in that could be deemed as climate actions?
Thank you very much. I'll add my voice to it briefly, and then I'll ask the Permanent Secretary and also the CEO of the port to respond in respect of certain initiatives. What I can tell you is that, let's take cruise for starters. The cruise industry, they have been undertaking a number of environmentally friendly approaches to their cruise ships in terms of how they dispose of their garbage, how they shred protein and other food matter on board ships, and how they fuel ships as well. What we are witnessing in Barbados is that the number of ships that are coming to Barbados that are LNG powered Indeed, a number of the cruise ship operators, when we did our visit to them, indicated that a number of the new ships coming on board and to be deployed will be powered by LNG. So that's a step in the right direction. And we believe that there are others that are going to arrive in the next cruise season. I can't speak to it now. That will also be a new ship that will be LNG powered. These are some of the initiatives being undertaken by the cruise sector in respect of, and that's a significant one for us. And of course, this is all driven by a number of the initiatives that you've mentioned, other initiatives coming out, and other European emission standards that some of the cruise ships have to follow. I can also tell you that some of the other cruise ships have retrofitted, and they have retrofitted to LNG and other fuel, more fuel efficient and fossil fuel compliant ships. And we are beginning to see a number of those arriving here in Barbados. I will ask the Permanent Secretary to speak to some of these matters, and then we'll ask the Chief Executive Officer of Barbados Port Inn to speak to some of the other environmentally friendly steps that they have taken at the Bridgeton Port. Permanent Secretary.
Thank you, Minister. Within the ministry, the BEST program initiative that occurred during COVID, under that program, a number of hotels were encouraged to green their plants. So a number of them undertook initiatives to install solar photovoltaics on their roofs, as well as to change out the types of lighting that they use and AC, air conditioners. And the ministry do have the reports today that show how many hotels have been involved in that program. Minister made reference to the cruise and the move towards LNG. And in fact, the cruise ship that will be christened in Barbados, the Arriva, that ship is being powered by LNG. So it provides an opportunity for us in Barbados to be able to grow and supply cleaner fuels to the cruise ships, which then helps us to reduce our own carbon footprint, because now these large cruise ships are using much more friendly fuels to power, which would again help in terms of the work we're doing also on the marine side, where we're trying to make sure then that our waters remain economically viable for not only ships, but certainly a number of Barbadians who use the seas for their livelihoods, the fishermen, and so on. So encouraging the ships then to move towards these more friendly type of fuels help us to promote those particular policies. And then, of course, the port will also speak to its efforts to utilize the waste to be able to generate and develop a waste-to-energy plant there also. These things are in line with the overall policy of the government in terms of moving Barbados towards a much more fossil-free environment where we reduce our dependency on fossil fuel for powering locally and having our businesses far more sustainable. Indeed, in terms of climate friendly, we have also placed within this estimates a program which the ministry will be rolling out, and I believe that is also included in all of the ministry's budgets this year, a program that will speak to climate friendly initiatives that each ministry is expected to implement. And these things are very much in alignment with the national energy policy that was at the forefront too of driving Barbados to have a lower carbon footprint, all in all, reducing our overall use of fossil fuel. So these are some of the initiatives that the ministry has undertaken, and the BEST program has certainly been one of those that have sought to was at the forefront
of the efforts in the Ministry of Tourism to reduce the carbon footprint of a number of our hotels there and hotel attractions around the island. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. John Murray.
Thank you, Minister. Minister MPS spoke quite well on the issue. However, the port has had to develop an environmental and social management system as part of the requirements of our partner, the IDB Invest, of our loans. A heavy interest and requirement on the environment and social management would have taken place, and so we do have that environmental and social management system in place. We've had to redesign our projects to take into account climate change. For example, the berth that was mentioned previously, we had to revisit that, spent some time in terms of ensuring that it addresses matter of sea level rises and so on. The mention was made about waste management. We've taken some time to get to the point of having a waste-to-energy incinerator designed and built. We did, because it's a critical piece of infrastructure, quite expensive, we want to make sure you get it done right. And we did go out to public tender via the Crown agents to procure a turnkey operation incinerator, a waste-to-energy incinerator. There were no successful bidders, so a decision was subsequently taken to invite designers, engineers, to design the facility. That tender closes on the 27th of February. It will take about 3 months to evaluate and thereafter advertise for a contractor to build out the waste-to-energy incinerator. It will be capable of taking all types of waste. The old incinerator could not take wet waste and so on, but this one is going to take all forms of waste, should be smokeless, and will also convert the waste into energy. In addition to that, we are building out, we are implementing a number of photovoltaics around the port. We've invited expressions of interest. We expect later on this year to award the tender and to be able to generate about 2 megawatts of energy. By 2025, our expectation is that we will be generating close to 50% of our power usage via alternatives. Minister mentioned what the cruise ships are doing with LNG, and we're also examining the possibility of what is called shore power, whereby ships could come into port and be plugged in and turn off the generators and the engines. This is a fairly new technology, being developed. We have a number of conversations going with various entities. For example, last week we spoke to a major tug group who want to bring barges that will have LNG powered, that will provide us with a shore power. Otherwise, it would involve significant investments working with the Barbados Light and Power. So we are exploring the possibility of shore power. We're having those conversations with the various lines and seeing where those installations exist. There are very few, and it's rather early days yet, but we're paying attention to that area also, as well as seeing how we could have the LNG available to fuel the vessels that are visiting Barbados. We're working closely with the Barbados National Oil Company on this matter also.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The Prime Minister has said on numerous occasions that the first tourist is a Bajan, a local tourist. And my question, therefore, has to do with the fact that there are thousands of persons the world over who are more familiar with some of our many attractions than many of our locals. It's twofold, this question, really. What strategies are being put in place to ensure that our locals are encouraged to take advantage of some of our local attractions? And then there was a program about 2 years ago where the Ministry of Tourism had partnered with the Ministry of Education to expose our school children to the numerous attractions that, that we have here in Barbados, just so they have a sense of what this country has to offer. Is that program, is a program we will see the revival of it? Of course, it was stymied by COVID, but are there any plans of revisiting that program? I think it was a wonderful initiative. In the short time that we had to plan it, it generated a lot of interest amongst children, teachers, and parents alike. So I know it was a program that would have been embraced by Barbadians, certainly by Barbadian children. So I'm asking, are there any plans to encourage more local tourism, and are there any plans to revisit that program to expose our children to the many attractions that we have to offer here?
Thank you, Honorable Member. Sometimes I struggle with what is meant by local tourism. I really do. But what I can tell you is that locals from time immemorial, I believe, have been taking advantage of a lot of the attractions and facilities that we have to offer. If I were to go back when I was in school, there would be a number of school tours organized for children to go to a number of attractions, and I believe that is still the case where a number of locals will go. I also know that on the odd occasion when persons are on vacation and for special events, I would see, for example, Barbadians on the safari trip going all over Barbados because they want to explore Barbados. They go to the Annual Flora Cave, they go to Harrison's Cave, they go to a number of other attractions. So that's why I made the point, not to be facetious, but to make the point that I struggle with what is known as local tourism. As we understand it, there are a number of attractions there, and the attractions are not exclusively for visitors. They are there for all Barbadians to go and to exploit and to obviously enjoy. In respect of whether or not there could be more participation by locals, then the answer is yes. How best we do that would have to be tied to the internal marketing program of these attractions. For example, during the what they call the shoulder to the summer period, there are opportunities that Barbadians could take advantage through special pricing, which happens, by the way. They can take through special pricing to go into some of these areas of attraction. So all I would say that they are available. These attractions are readily available for all Barbadians. And I think that they should continue to explore them. And all I can do from where I sit now is to encourage the attractions to continue with their special pricing, to encourage locals to come, particularly during the shoulder and summer periods.
I had also mentioned the program, the partnership with the Ministry of Education, but I think subsuming your answer is an answer to encourage not only the adults but children as well. My last question, I'm interested enough to see the Minister of Sport enter the chamber as I was about to ask this question, because it speaks to sports tourism. I think it was alluded to earlier when we referenced Rihanna and Zane Maloney, but there are a number of other young Barbadian athletes who have done well on the international stage. I'm just querying, in terms of our marketing, how is the ministry seeking to leverage the global appeal of persons not only Zane Maloney, but also persons like Chelsea Tuck, who have excelled in surfing? How are we leveraging the global appeal of these persons to not only to encourage some of those events where they have excelled in to come to Barbados, the actual events, have the events held here, but also to perhaps use to build out some of the events that currently exist. I think particularly of Run Barbados. I know just recently that event was revitalized, resuscitated. A new track, more competitive track was put in place, and new life was more or less breathed into that event. So how are we looking in terms of our sports tourism to bring new life to some of our events, and at the same time using some of our more outstanding athletes? I've only called those two, but I'm sure there are many others that we can partner with and work with to further build out our sports tourism.
Thank you very much. I would want to inform you that the BTMI, they currently have a marketing partnership with Chelsea. And that is going well according to my information, so I just thought I would share that. And that is what we're about. In respect of the Run Barbados, and a number of activities are revolving around the Run Barbados held last year, what the BTMI did is that they are focusing on bringing certain projects into the community. And the Run Barbados and the series of events revolving around Barbados were designed in, obviously, your constituency, the constituency of St. Andrew. But that was a deliberate strategy because it was also a platform for the media to showcase the eastern side of Barbados. And because as you probably know, or you may have known, that we had Sportsmax coverage for the entire event. And it would have been beamed live, and obviously with their associated ESPN channels, they were able to broadcast it and project that across Barbados. And I've been advised that the reports that we received from the director in the market indicated that it was a very good export. It was very good exposure for Barbados. So I think we will do that. What I can also tell you is that there are a number of other initiatives designed in that same space in order to build out capacity in our tourism sector, and we will continue to do so. But I should also tell you in respect of Chelsea that there are additional marketing efforts in train, and the BTMI will be announcing those as we go along. I'm not sure if Mr. Trainhart, you wish to add any comments.
Thank you, Minister. Yes, just to add to the comments from the Minister that covered most of the pieces that we're working on. So we're trying to be very proactive at the BTMI to make sure that we partner with the Barbadian sports talent. So Chelsea Tuok, we have a partnership, Zane Maloney. We've also collaborated with Brian Tulmer on the kite surfing side, which was mentioned earlier. So a lot of opportunities that we're seeking to make sure that the Barbadian word gets out, and that when these athletes travel, that they wave the Barbadian flag. We've also had conversations with the Barbadian Olympic Association to explore opportunities how we can partner as well. Recently, we have signed a partnership with the Golf Association and upgraded actually our partnership from what's called the QS 3000 to the QS 5000, which allows us to host more top surfers in Barbados when the competition is held this year. And also on March 4th, the Gold Cup, the horse racing, is televised internationally as well. So there's a lot of sports events that are going on, and obviously we're looking to see how we can leverage these to promote Barbados to the world. Thank you.
If I may also add, Mr. Chairman, just for your information, that Chelsea Talk will also be documenting what we refer to as a docu docu-series on surfing in Barbados, and that should be released within about 3 weeks, and that's meant to promote Surf Pro in Barbados. I can also tell you that we are working with the honorable member for St. John and his ministry on a number of projects relating to sports, and therefore you should see those being rolled out in the forthcoming financial year as well. I just thought I would add that to give you some further context. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report progress to His Honor the Speaker.
The question is that I do now report progress to His Honor the Speaker and ask for leave to sit again. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported progress and requested leave to sit again. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until Wednesday, the 22nd at 10 a.m.
Better second.
The question is that this honorable chamber be suspended until Wednesday, the 22nd day of February 2023 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands suspended until Tuesday, the 22nd day of, Wednesday, the 22nd day of February at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.